Chapter 317 Demon Fetus. You have successfully acquired 9,670 years of lifespan from the Dark Soul Ancestor, Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm, 3rd level. Looking at the prompt before him, Guan remained indifferent. If it were not for the other party charging at him directly, he would not have bothered to kill him. The reason he did not perform the soul search was because the space within the stone pillar still concealed other heavenly demons. Guan casually responded, "It's just a demon soul. Its realm high or low doesn't matter." "Doesn't matter?" Zhu Xinglan opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Guan's divine thought locked onto the space inside the stone pillar, where, within that pitch-black space, there existed yet another aura of a heavenly demon that was even more terrifying. His divine thought captured the location of that heavenly demon. It turned out to be a demon egg. The demon egg, formed from demonic qi and about a zhang tall, emitted a faint glow, like the weak starlight in the dark universe. Guan's divine thought penetrated the demon egg and saw a demon infant. He saw the demon infant entwined with heavy and complex karma, even making him feel uneasy, his intuition telling him that eradicating the demon infant would bring greater trouble. He withdrew his divine thought and also stopped his actions, restoring the restriction on the stone pillar. He turned and said to Zhu Xinglan, "From now on, no one must enter this place and you must not disturb this stone pillar. There is a fearsome heavenly demon inside, difficult to handle, and it has yet to awaken." Hearing this, Zhu Xinglan immediately became nervous and muttered, "Heavenly demon. Sure enough, the previous problem has not been completely resolved." Guan couldn't help but ask, did the previous internal upheaval on Dingtian Peak have to do with the heavenly demon? That's right, that terrible evil demon was a heavenly demon. It said that the former peak master was transformed by the heavenly demon. The sect feared that spreading the word would stir up greater turmoil, so they concealed the fact. Zhu Xinglan nodded, his face full of worry. The greater turmoil he referred to was the Holy Court, which has the deepest apprehension for heavenly demons. Guan suddenly thought of Yu Yingying and Shinxinzi. Could there be other heavenly demon reincarnations in the world? He felt it was very likely. He sensed he had triggered an extraordinary side plot. He did not want to get involved, so he prepared to seal this place, especially since the demon fetus was still in slumber. As such, it's even more crucial not to speak of this, understood? Guan cautioned. As for informing the Holy Court, he had considered it, but the matter of him casually killing a divine immortal of wondrous dharma could likely be exposed due to that, and Mortal World Peak does not trust the Holy Court either, otherwise they would not have concealed the matter of the heavenly demon. After all, he came here to plant herbs. The well-being of Mortal World Peak has nothing to do with him. Of course, when he becomes strong enough to ignore the karma of the demon fetus, he could then erase the being, giving himself greater peace of mind. Zhu Xinglan nodded, but the deep furrows in his brow did not smooth out. The blood prison great saint looked thoughtfully at the stone pillar. Afterward, they left the cave. Zhu Xinglan began to seal the entrance and Guan rode the blood prison great saint back to the mountaintop. The blood prison great saint had many questions he wanted to ask, but he was afraid of being overheard by the great cultivator, so he had to swallow his words. In the following time, Guan began picking medicinal herbs at Mortal World Peak. Zhu Xinglan had already set up a large medicine garden, which was guarded by disciples on regular days. When Guan personally came to pick herbs, the disciples were initially taken aback by the honor but later got used to it. Of course, no matter how approachable Guan seemed to be, they always remained reserved. After half a day's stay on Dingtian Peak, Guan left with several hundreds of thousands of years of lifespan. He came to pick herbs once a month, and the lifespan income from Dingtian Peak last year had already broken 1,000,000 years, surpassing his foundation on the Taizong continent. After returning to the Supreme Sect, just as the blood prison great saint was about to speak, Guan stopped him. "Remember what I said when we left, don't ask, you will see through everything eventually." Guan's words made the blood prison great saint grow respectful. He felt that his master was instructing him. His nature was too impulsive, which is why he ended up like this, indeed needing to cultivate his Taoist heart. In Mortal World Peak, Guan was the revered peak master, and in the Supreme Sect he was just an ordinary valley master. Watching Guan chatting and laughing with the servant disciples, the blood prison great saint was incredibly impressed. He felt the master wasn't pretending. In the master's heart, all sentient beings truly are equal. The distinction of strength lies in one's cultivation level, but the life of every creature is equal. The blood prison great saint increasingly felt there was much to learn from his master, such as this way of interacting with others which surely would lead to many good connections. If someone could defy the heavens and change their fate, These tales might spread far and wide in the future. However, his realization was quickly shattered. Because that detestable fat mouse came to harass him again. What made him most exasperated was that the fat mouse became even faster. How could he feel that this mouse also possessed peerless talent? This was too absurd. Guan then started to inspect the different sectors within Medicine Valley. Although the third Medicine Valley seldom had trouble, he still had to perform his duties on the surface, to prevent the disciples from slacking. Summer passed and autumn arrived. In the early autumn season within the Outer World Cave, Tian Yaoer, Tian Qing and Tian Bai were attacking Guan together. The three demons constantly changed their movement techniques, their demon energy rolling like a dragon, surrounding Guan facing their offensive. Guan seemed quite at ease, with just a wave of his hand he could resolve their spells. Tian Yaoer stepped on the 9 Extremes Freedom Steps and appeared behind Guan. She struck with her palm, from which fire surged, rapidly expanding into the shape of a phoenix and swallowing him whole. The next second, the fire phoenix immediately scattered, causing Tian Yaoer to be shaken and fly backward. Guan then raised his leg and countless shadows burst forth, causing Tian Qing and Tian Bai to lose their composure, unable to defend in time. They were hit by the leg shadows one after another and were knocked flying, landing clumsily far away. The three demons struggled to get up, looking at Guan with aggrieved expressions on their faces. If this were a real fight to the death, you would be dead by now. There aren't many people out there who will indulge you like I do, Guan commented nonchalantly while withdrawing his leg. Tian Yaoer widened her eyes and asked, "Is every creature out there as powerful as you?" "There are always people beyond you, heavens beyond heavens," Guan casually answered. He had already restrained himself enough not to injure them. "Is that so?" Tian Yaoer was skeptical. She always felt that whenever Guan mentioned fearing this and that, it was all to scare them, while he himself seemed forever calm and composed. Guan snorted, "Anyway, you still need more practice." Tian Qing and Tian Bai immediately approached, clinging to Guan's arms and sweetly agreeing with Master. This made Tian Yaoer grit her teeth with irritation. Why did it seem as though the other two had been spoiled rotten? After Guan gave a few more pieces of advice, he took his leave. Tian Yaoer immediately pounced on Tian Qing and Tian Bai, and the second battle commenced. The autumn wind swept through, blowing a leaf into the courtyard where an elderly man in rich attire was sweeping the floor. It was none other than the aged Xiaochuan. Xiaochuan held the broom with both hands and swept slowly, as if his sweeping was not just cleaning the ground, but also a gesture of refinement. A young boy ran into the yard, spotting Xiaochuan, and couldn't help but exclaim, "Grandfather, why are you sweeping again? Is sweeping that fun? It's not like we have no servants in the house." The young man wore blue clothes, had a fair face, and appeared to be around 15 or 16 years old, with his hair tied up high, exuding youthful vigor. Xiaochuan didn't stop his sweeping but replied with a kindly smile, "It's not about fun, it's a habit. Sweeping helps me reminisce about the past. When you get old like me, you too will love to look back. You're young and don't understand." The boy stepped forward, hands on his hips, discontentedly saying, "Grandpa, I heard you once practiced in the Immortal sect. Why don't you recommend us to enter the Supreme sect and cultivate? Cultivation is not forbidden to ordinary people." Over the years, cultivators have appeared in the city from time to time, and the magistrate's grandson has even gone for cultivation. "Grandpa, although our family has money, it's not enough. We must think long-term." He rambled continuously, while Xiaochuan watched him complain without getting angry. Once he finished, Xiaochuan suddenly asked, "What if you go to the Immortal sect and discover your cultivation talent to be very ordinary, inferior to anyone around you, being left behind by them continuously, what would you do?" The boy glanced with disbelief. "How could I be that bad?" "Your grandfather, I was just that bad. But people are different, right? If someone with exceptional talent emerged from our family, wouldn't that be a blessing for generations, and even you would benefit? Hey, your uncle once went to an Immortal cultivation sect. His talent was mediocre and he nearly died in a conflict with cultivators. Whether someone is extraordinarily talented or not, these eyes of mine can see." Xiaochuan shook his head and said as each descendant grew up, they would come and ask him these questions. He had also sent children to practice, but the results were always unsatisfying. Of course, he didn't send them to the Supreme sect. He didn't want to cause more trouble for his senior brother. If they couldn't succeed in other sects, how could they go to the Supreme sect? "But can you really see that clearly?" the boy asked with wide eyes, his face turning red with urgency. Just as Xiaochuan was about to respond, his eyes suddenly widened. Guan walked into the courtyard looking around as if searching for something. When Guan spotted Xiao Chuan, he too broke into a smile. Noticing his grandfather's expression, the boy turned his head to look and then frowned, sizing up Guan and asking, "Who are you? I haven't seen you before?" "What?" Xiao Chuan smacked the back of his head, not too harshly, and scolded with a smile. "Do you remember everyone in the house, apart from the maids? Beat it." The boy pouted but had to leave, sizing up Guan as he went. Chuanyue Chi Cultivation Realm, first level 15/80/180. Guan gestured playfully at Chuanyue, causing Chuanyue to glare at him. Once the boy left, Xiao Chuan stepped forward and hugged Guan excitedly. "Senior brother, how come you're here?" Xiao Chuan was ecstatic. Guan was slightly annoyed. "When your grandson was here, why didn't you call me senior brother?" Xiao Chuan grinned. "That was to prevent him from clinging to you once he realized your identity. You are a high cultivator of the supreme sect, at least in his eyes." Looking at the signs of aging on Xiao Chuan's face, Guan felt a sense of nostalgia. Why stop the children from seeking the immortal path? I'm not stopping them, they just want to use my connections to get in. If they truly possess the talent, they will rise even without my intervention. Xiao Chuan shook his head. His words seemed to make sense to Guan. Decades had passed, and Xiao Chuan had become more mature, with the sediment of years evident on him, no longer the silent youth who once followed Guan. Chapter 318. Peering into Life. The so-called will of heaven. Guan and Xiao Chuan sat in the courtyard chatting with great enthusiasm about the past. When they spoke of those olden times, they both harbored many sighs, and when it came to those long-departed friends, they would fall into brief silences. "I sent you out of the valley these many decades, have you been satisfied with your life?" Guan asked. Xiao Chuan smiled and said, "Of course I'm satisfied. At least I have no regrets in life. I've even glimpsed the immortal path. How can a mortal who achieves my level not be content? Those who aren't satisfied are probably oppressed their whole life. With that state of mind, no matter how high their cultivation level is, they'll never be content." Guan couldn't help but raise his teacup to toast him. Such openness was truly rare. Guan had harbored resentments towards Xiao Chuan before for not cultivating diligently. Now he thought about it. Even if Xiao Chuan didn't achieve much in immortal cultivation, he has at least lived a life more joyous than worrisome. However, the thought that Xiao Chuan wouldn't live for many more years made Guan somewhat reluctant to part. He had experienced this feeling many times during the reincarnation evolution, especially in the life of Long Zhan. Long Zhan's drastic change in temperament was because he had lived through too many such events, particularly the death of his beloved wife, which deeply traumatized him. The powerful Long Zhan realized that even with his strength, he would have regrets, which was why he ventured alone into the universe. Xiao Chuan seemed to understand Guan's mood and said to comfort him, "Senior brother, although you haven't started a family, there are many who care about you. You won't be alone." Guan suddenly asked, "What if they were all like you, what should I do then?" Xiao Chuan was stunned. He looked deep into Guan's eyes and said, "Senior brother, anyone else might worry about this question, but you needn't. You treat people kindly, always making friends. Besides, solitude isn't necessarily torture. Isn't the choice of what life you want to lead based on your heart? I can be so open-minded because I learned it from you. Ever since I was little, I've admired you the most. No matter how powerful your senior brother is, in my eyes he doesn't compare to you because you live freely and can protect the people you want to care for." Upon saying this, Xiao Chuan smiled again. Guan suddenly felt an impulse. This time he wouldn't just go along with Xiao Chuan's wishes. Guan took out a secret book and threw it on the table. Xiao Chuan instinctively looked at it. Surprised, he asked, "What is this?" "This records a kind of spell." Guan began to introduce, and with just a sentence Xiao Chuan became entranced. Guan took this chance to enlighten Xiao Chuan, immersing his thoughts in the heaven and earth rules, allowing him to momentarily forget about outside matters. Autumn winds swept up the fallen leaves in the courtyard, as if fate refused to let them settle on the ground. Above the sea, dressed in black, Leia stood on a black eagle's back, his gaze fixed on the distance. Above the sea-breaking rift, hung a majestic and mighty floating island, on which stood a city emanating an awe-inspiring aura that commanded respect from all living beings. "Broken Sea Domain Master City," Leia muttered to himself, frowning. A divine exotic immortal spirit appeared on his shoulder and said softly, "There are terrifying things hidden there that will eat me, don't go near." Hearing this, Li Ya's frown deepened as it was the first time he heard the divine exotic immortal spirit say such a thing. He took a deep breath, then stamped his foot, and the black eagle flapped its wings harder, speeding up like an arrow, quickly diving into the sea-breaking rift. Once inside the dark rift, Liu breathed a sigh of relief, his gaze looking down with determination. Jianghu, wait for me, I haven't given up on you. Liu's hands tightened into fists within his sleeves, and he drew his heavy sword, ready for battle. Meanwhile, far away in Mystic Valley, Guan was picking medicinal herbs. He couldn't help but stand up and look into the distance. It had been 10 years since he had lectured Xiaochuan. Over those years he hadn't seen Xiaochuan again and had immersed himself back into his life. In those 10 years he had extended his lifespan by more than 18 million years, and so had been happy every year. It was not until today that the divine exotic immortal spirit told him, it sensed a dangerous presence. The divine exotic immortal spirit claimed to feel the presence of a natural enemy within the Broken Sea Domain Master City, an extremely sinister presence. Guan probed with divine thought and discovered a heavenly demon within the Broken Sea Domain Master City. Another heavenly demon. This heavenly demon also possessed the cultivation level of a divine immortal of wondrous dharma, unlike the dark soul ancestor before. This one was a living spirit. There he was, hidden in a dark palace, separated by many restrictions. No matter how Guan saw it, he didn't look like a prisoner. Could it be that the holy king behind the great cold demon sect had a connection with the heavenly demon? Guan didn't alarm them. Exterminating demons was easy, but severing causality was difficult. It was better for both sides to wait, even though he did not know what the other side was waiting for, but he knew he was growing stronger every year. Nirvana, loose immortal, wandering immortal, heaven and earth flying immortal, carefree primordial immortal, divine immortal of wondrous dharma, Tao void mysterious immortal, and divine thought true immortal. In this world where even carefree primordial immortals were rare, Guan, in the realm of divine thought true immortal, had the confidence to face all trials. Guan watched for a while longer, then withdrew his divine thought. He wasn't panicked by the calculations of that holy king. He felt that the holy king might be a pawn of the heavenly demon. Inviting the hostility of the heavenly demon for personal grievances, though not afraid, was unnecessary. Guan continued picking medicinal herbs, humming a little tune. Once he finished picking the medicinal herbs, he left Mystic Valley. He arrived on the eaves of a building at the Chuan residence, his gaze on Xiaochuan who was cultivating in the courtyard. After that enlightenment, Xiaochuan devoted more time to cultivation, a subject he had mentioned to no one. Guan saw that Xiaochuan's ultimate lifespan had increased to 415 years. Not too bad. He then peeked into Xiaochuan's causality. On a typical day, Guan wouldn't only be playing around, he cultivated too. What he studied the most was the causality of life. He could now probe the entire lives of mortals. Even if a 3-year-old child stood before him, he could see the end of their life in an instant. As expected, Xiaochuan's life had changed. Previously, Guan saw Xiaochuan passing away with a peaceful and regret-free departure. This time he saw Xiaochuan surviving past his original lifespan's end, with the Chuan house also producing a generation with stronger talent for cultivation. But as he watched, Guan's brows furrowed. Xiaochuan died at age 413, not living out his full ultimate lifespan because his descendants offended a powerful cultivation family. Worn out from too much exertion, he died of depression in the end. Guan suddenly felt that his enlightenment of Xiaochuan might not have been such a good thing. But on second thought, he'd simply take action when the time came. He was the biggest variable in Xiaochuan's life causality. With that in mind, Guan looked towards the other members of the Chuan family, peering into their lives. A mortal's life seems long to them but is short in his eyes. Their decades of experience would just flash by him, causing no burden and not affecting him in the slightest. That was the strength of a divine thought true immortal. Not to say divine thought true immortal, even a Tao void mysterious immortal could reach this degree. It wasn't long before Guan's gaze landed on a boy called Chuan Qi. Chuan Qi, untrained in Qi cultivation 3/120/1050. Such talent was definitely the strongest among Xiaochuan's descendants. Guan began to probe into Chuan Qi's life. It wasn't Chuan Qi who offended the cultivation family, but another member of the Chuan house. After Xiaochuan's death, Chuan Qi left the family and ventured alone into the immortal cultivation world. This youngster actually lived past the years of his ultimate lifespan, meaning he would encounter great fortunes in the future, the specifics of which, Guan could not determine from causality. Until Chuan Qi met a girl. After that, the causality broke and his future became unfathomable. When Guan saw the girl, he could instantly tell she harbored a heavenly demon's soul. Another heavenly demon. Exactly how many heavenly demons had infiltrated the great heavenly spirit land? Guan frowned and continued to scan the others. He stood proudly on the eaves, unseen by those passing through the courtyard below. After 30 minutes, Guan finally returned to the third medicine valley. He stepped down from the transmission array platform, pondering over causality and fate. Guan, come over for a game of Go. A voice called out, and as Guan turned his head, the caller was none other than the nine-fingered Divine Lord. In recent years, Lu Xinyi and stealing the 5 elements had left. There were only 2 great cultivators left in the valley, Shen Xinzi and the nine-fingered Divine Lord. Shen Xinzi was not very interested in Go, preferring to study Journey to the West and Investiture of the Gods. Guan didn't understand why Shen Xinzi could keep on reading those 2 books over and over, but he chose to respect his choices. Guan walked towards the nine-fingered Divine Lord while simultaneously probing his causality and fate. The higher the opponent's cultivation level, the shorter the lifespan Guan could see. The nine-fingered Divine Lord's lifespan and causality were extremely complex, staying consistent for decades, but Guan could no longer see beyond 50 years into the future. Guan settled down before the Go board as he opened the Go box. He asked, "Predecessor, you have lived for a long time. Tell me, should cultivators intervene in the lives of mortals even with good intentions?" The nine-fingered Divine Lord looked at him in surprise upon hearing this question, never expecting him to ask such a thing. "You've asked the right person. I think one shouldn't. Cultivation itself is a path against nature. Intervening in a mortal's life will only bring them calamity. There is a will of heaven inherent within the universe. Once I faced a trial. That ordeal left me gravely injured, losing a finger, but it also confirmed for me the existence of the will of heaven. There is certainly a force beyond the reach and touch of cultivators that may lack consciousness, but it controls the fate of all beings. The higher my cultivation, the more I feel its vastness." As he spoke, a hint of fear even appeared in the eyes of the nine-fingered Divine Lord. Guan curiously asked, "Is it from Holy Court?" Ever since the establishment of the Broken Sea domain, Holy Court had entered the collective consciousness of the beings on the continent, becoming an institution representing the divine forces amidst mortal beings. The nine-fingered Divine Lord shook his head and said, "No, Holy Court is also at the mercy of this force. From what I know, between this world and the universe lies a barrier of power that prevents mortal spirits from flying out. It is like a set of rules and even the Holy Court must obey." Guan looked up, indeed aware of such rules. It was a layer of light enveloping the great heavenly spirit land that forced living beings to reach the heaven and earth flying immortal realm before they could fly to the universe. Even as a divine thought true immortal, Guan could not see through these rules. The divine origin realm where Longzhan was not restricted by such rules. Guan looked up at the sky and placed a stone onto the center of the Go board. Chapter 319. Fighting against the heavens. After a fierce and exhilarating battle, the nine-fingered Divine Lord looked extremely displeased. He lifted his eyes to look at Guan and asked through gritted teeth, "Where exactly is the problem?" Guan shrugged and said, "I don't know. Why can you always guess my next move? Intuition tells me where you'll play next, and as long as I guess right, you seem to get flustered and keep changing your strategy, eventually exposing your weaknesses." Guan's response infuriated the nine-fingered Divine Lord so much that he nearly coughed up blood. Guan's smile faded as he said, "However, this game of chess has indeed made me understand that change can indeed bring disaster. Thank you for your teachings, Senior." With that he stood up, gave a formal bow and took his leave. The nine-fingered Divine Lord watched Guan's retreating figure and opened his mouth, but ultimately his gaze fell back on the chessboard. Guan walked towards his loft with a smile on his face. In fact, there was one more thing he didn't say. Change can indeed lead to disaster, but whether it's for better or worse depends on the player himself. Life is like a game of chess and Guan intends to be a player who always wins. Even if his opponent is what they call fate. To struggle against destiny is a joy, isn't it? Having come to this realization, Guan no longer felt burdened. He didn't intend to casually change others' lives, only the lives of those he cared about. Xiaochuan was indeed open-minded, but his wish to be reborn into a good life in the next life also showed his longing for immortal cultivation, just lacking an innate talent. Guan also realized that as long as he kept getting stronger, he could keep pushing the limits of those around him. What cannot be achieved now does not mean it cannot be done in the future. Reincarnation might exist, but he only wished to strive for the present. This Ji Xiaoyu was not the same person from his past life, and Guan was not Longzhan, Xiao Xingtian, or Chu Lu. In the divine exotic realm, beneath the blood-red sky and above the sea of clouds, Jianghu stood shoulder to shoulder with the master of divine exotic realm, overlooking the battle below. Endless waves of divine exotic resentful ghosts besieged Li Ye, coming at him like relentless waves, never ceasing. Without the divine exotic city, Li Ye was embroiled in a difficult fight. The divine exotic resentful ghosts are undying. With his capabilities, at most he can hold on for one ancient hour, said the master of divine exotic realm, expressionless. Jianghu turned to him and asked, "Why won't you let me meet him? I can make things clear." "What things clear?" "Say that someone is backing you, forcing me to not restrict you? And even taking you as a disciple?" The master of divine exotic realm glanced at him coldly and asked. Jianghu frowned, not understanding his meaning. The master of divine exotic realm scoffed, "Do you think the city in the sky was built to suppress us? If so, why don't they invade?" "If not for you, then for whom was it established?" asked Jianghu in confusion, his eyes widening with surprise. "Could it be for Sword Venerable Fudao? Wait, could the person who saved me be Sword Venerable Fudao?" Jianghu was utterly shocked. So the sparrow had Sword Venerable Fudao backing it? The master of divine exotic realm gazed down at Li Ye and said, "After all these years, he's the only one to have broken in. Might this person have some karmic connection with Sword Venerable Fudao?" Jianghu hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "He received the legacy of Sword Venerable Fudao and learned his swordsmanship." He left unsaid the claim that Li Ye had made, that Sword Venerable Fudao was his primordial ancestor. He now understood that it must have been arranged by Sword Venerable Fudao for them to meet. But he still couldn't figure out why Sword Venerable Fudao had taken an interest in him. "So that's how it is. It seems they have reached far and wide," the master of divine exotic realm said somberly. Jianghu couldn't help but ask, "Master, isn't Holy Court supposed to be good? You've said before that the Holy King doesn't represent Holy Court." The master of divine exotic realm took a deep breath and said, "He didn't represent it before, but now it's not certain. The Holy Court tried to recruit Sword Venerable Fudao, but he didn't accept the Chi Fortune outcome. That's enough for the Holy Court to be wary. In fact, there is a certain power in this world that the Holy Court fears. We are the evolution of that power. It's precisely because of this that the Holy King has kept me, wanting to use me to identify that power." Jianghu quickly asked about the nature of that power. The master of divine exotic realm uttered two words, "Heavenly Demon." Jianghu frowned. This was the first time he had heard of the Heavenly Demon. "Can you spare him?" Jianghu asked through gritted teeth. He didn't understand what a heavenly demon was. All he wanted was for his brother to live. The master of divine exotic realm said somberly, "I've already delayed the time, but if Sword Venerable Fudao doesn't appear and I let him go, then it's you and me who will die." Upon hearing this, Jianghu looked around. He increasingly felt as if there were eyes watching him from the shadows. He noticed the master of divine exotic realm's hand on his waist casting a spell. He looked back down and his eyes hardened. He was about to rush to help, but as he leaned forward, a hand pressed down on him. He turned to look, and the person holding his shoulder was the master of divine exotic realm. The master of divine exotic realm's expression was indifferent. At this moment, his look made Jianghu feel alienated and cold. The thought of Li Ye possibly dying was the thing Jianghu couldn't accept the most. He wanted to speak, but he couldn't utter a sound. In the vast sea of ghosts, Li Ye wielded his heavy sword, sweeping powerfully in all directions. But no matter how many divine exotic resentful ghosts he vanquished, more swarmed in. "Damn it! Do you really acknowledge me as your master? Why won't you listen to me?" Li Ye cursed in his heart. He was unable to harness the power of the divine exotic city, which frustrated him greatly. "No. It will devour me." The voice of the divine exotic immortal spirit rang out, filled with fear. Li Ye was infuriated by this. How had this creature become so gutless? Damn it! Was he to die here before even seeing Jianghu? If junior brother Gu knew of his death, would he grieve? No, that's wrong. Having been gone for so long and so far away, would junior brother Gu reach the end of his life still thinking him out conquering the world? Perhaps that's for the best. Li Ye's sword swings began to slow. Flashes of memories from his youth passed before his eyes. When he and Meng Lang and Li Ye had all entered the Mystic Valley with Meng Lang gone missing, and now him about to die here, who would have thought the least talented Guan would be the last one alive? What a twist of fate. A divine exotic resentful ghost suddenly lunged at Li Ye, holding a soul sword whose cold light shattered all the visions before his eyes and filled his pupils. Am I going to die? Li Ya's pupils dilated. Just then, his body burst into golden light, like unstoppable waves wiping out all the surrounding divine exotic resentful ghosts. Li Ya was taken aback by the sudden change in the scenery as a golden city's phantom emerged from within him, rapidly enlarging to envelope him. The divine exotic city. Li Ya was overjoyed, ready to ask why the divine exotic immortal spirit had suddenly chosen to defy, when a terrifying and unmatched pressure descended, enveloping the whole world. Have you finally decided to come forth, Sword Venerable Fudao? To entrust such an immortal path's supreme treasure to a mere mortal child for amusement, what a grand gesture. An ancient and majestic voice sounded, causing Li Ya to become stunned. The primordial ancestor. Chapter 320, Great Nether Sank King Divine Exotic City appeared, and the entire dim world was illuminated by dazzling golden light. Among it, Li Ya stared dumbfoundedly at his surroundings. He could feel that the power of divine exotic city was stronger than when he had used it, and it was incomparable. This meant that the voice from earlier was telling the truth. Thinking about it, he had never truly mastered the power of divine exotic city. It was always commanded by divine exotic immortal spirit. Above the clouds, the master of divine exotic realm looked at the ever-expanding divine exotic city, his eyes flickering, unsure of his thoughts. Jianghu, however, felt a surge of relief. Should Sword Venerable Fudao truly arrive, then Li Ya would be saved. In his heart, Sword Venerable Fudao was an invincible existence, a belief shared by all creatures from the Taitsong continent. A figure materialized next to Li Ya. He glanced over, his pupils suddenly dilating. It was that familiar demonic shadow. The dark purple demonic chi did not seem evil in his eyes but rather appeared endearing. Guan tilted his head, glancing towards Li Ya. Li Ya quickly raised his hand in salute and said, "Primordial ancestor." Words jammed in his throat, unable to be spoken. Boom, rolling thunderclouds quickly covered the blood-red heavens, countless thunderbolts twirling like dragons and snakes, immensely spectacular, plunging the land into oppression. The sea of clouds formed a giant face, occupying most of the sky, making everything between heaven and earth seem insignificant. Jianghu looked up at this giant face, speechless with shock, feeling an extremely terrifying pressure that he had never experienced before. Even the master of divine exotic realm looked solemn. The strength of the master of divine exotic realm was comparable to that of a carefree primordial immortal, yet he did not possess the comfort of a carefree primordial immortal. This giant face was truly the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma, an existence surpassing the carefree primordial immortal. The master of divine exotic realm couldn't help but turn his gaze towards Guan inside divine exotic city, thinking expectantly, "Sword Venerable Fudao, how will you face this?" Even the powerful great cold demon sect that besieged the continent in the past couldn't achieve such a presence. "Sword Venerable Fudao, why have you not accepted the rewards from the holy court?" An aged voice sounded again, stern in tone. Guan slightly lifted his head, his voice reverberating across the heaven and earth. "Why must I accept? Am I considered a demon if I do not join the holy court?" If the holy court truly thought this way, Guan couldn't help but be more wary of the chi fortune. Is chi fortune not a form of bondage? None of such, but refusing to join the holy court surely has some dubious reason. "Sword Venerable Fudao, why do you refuse to show yourself? What exactly are you apprehensive about?" The aged voice boomed like thunder, echoing unceasingly. Guan, hearing this, lost all interest in conversing. 3 breaths time. "If you don't leave, don't blame me for lacking respect for the holy court." Guan's voice was chilling, putting the entire heaven and earth on edge for a killing spree. The giant face above clearly changed, but it did not respond. 3 breaths time seemed so prolonged at this moment. Jianghu and Li Ya dared not even breathe, and the master of divine exotic realm likewise awaited the decision of that mysterious existence. Such a formidable being, and even Sword Venerable Fudao could disregard it. The master of divine exotic realm was profoundly moved, believing his choice was right. He could easily kill Li Ya, but the reason he hadn't was purely out of respect for Sword Venerable Fudao. After 3 breaths, Guan raised his right hand, his palm facing the giant face in the sky. "Sword Venerable," as he began to speak, the giant face in the sky suddenly vanished and Guan withdrew his hand. The world instantly fell into silence. Li Ya's eyes widened. He saw the rolling thunderclouds silently torn open, creating a giant hole exactly where the mysterious giant face had been. He instinctively looked towards Guan, seeing an old man enveloped in mist in Guan's palm, the elder full of panic, unable to struggle or escape. Even though the old man was speaking, Leah couldn't hear a word. Guan then disappeared from the spot. Divine exotic immortal spirit appeared on Leah's shoulder, tiny hands patting her small chest, looking extremely relieved. Jianghu and the master of divine exotic realm were also stunned. What they had thought would be an unprecedented great war, the master of divine exotic realm had even prepared for the world to shatter, yet the mysterious great power from the holy court was just taken away like this. How high could Sword Venerable Fudeo's realm be? The master of divine exotic realm was filled with fear, a terrifying thought suddenly occurring to him. Could it be that Sword Venerable Fudao was truly a heavenly demon, and from the beginning he stood in opposition to the holy court? The waves crashed against the shore. Guan sat on the rock, having already activated the lifespan barrier, his right hand opened, containing the old man sitting cross-legged inside, who was indeed the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma stationed at the domain master city of the Broken Sea domain. Guan was performing the great imprisoned soul immortal technique, searching the other's memories. This person, named Luo Shuzi, was a reincarnation of the heavenly demon, holding a third-grade heavenly position in the holy court, one of the confidants of the great Nether Saint King. Luo Zuz's many memories were protected by a mystery spell, which would shatter and dissipate automatically if invaded, all related to the great Nether Saint King. Unfortunately, such methods were akin to child's play before Guan's divine sense. He easily deciphered them and glimpsed into Luo Zuz's dealings with the great Nether Saint King. The creation of the Broken Sea domain was indeed set by the great Nether Saint King. Within it was his arch-nemesis, the Candle World Saint King. Initially, the great Nether Saint King merely wanted to exterminate the Candle World Saint King, keeping him eternally in reincarnation. Many under his command took this opportunity for their gain, leading to the calamity in the Broken Sea domain. After Guan made his move, the great Nether Saint King regarded him as an enemy. Now the great Nether Saint King suspected Guan might also be a reincarnation of the heavenly demon, hence he sent Luo Shuzi over. According to Luo Zuz's memories, the great Nether Saint King was not a heavenly demon, but he was fervently searching for the reincarnation of the heavenly demon, his intentions unknown to anyone. It appears it wasn't the holy court aiming for Sword Venerable Fudao but the great Nether Saint King's intent. The holy court had profound depth and numerous factions. Viewing the Broken Sea domain, it seemed vast, but in the eyes of the greater heavenly spirit land, it was but trivial, not even reaching the eyes of the standard first-rank heavenly position. The third-grade heavenly position, also known as the Holy King, was not short of position holders in the holy court. Ascending further were the second-grade heavenly position's holy minister and the first-grade heavenly position's holy god. After searching Luo Ziz's soul, Guan extinguished his soul. He wasn't concerned about further tricks from the great Nether Saint King. In fact, he was looking forward to seeing what the great Nether Saint King would do next. Facing an unknown adversary, regardless of how powerful his minions were, they would fall discreetly. Wouldn't the great Nether Saint King feel pressured? Although the Holy Court didn't care about the Broken Sea domain, the epic battle between Guan and the Great Cold Demon sect from years ago did reach the Holy Court. The Holy Court's ability to recruit Sword Venerable Fudao also showed that most of the upper echelons in the Holy Court were favorable towards Sword Venerable Fudao's actions, which is why the great Nether Saint King only dared to operate from the shadows. A prompt appeared before Guan. He had seized over 20,000 years of Luo Ziz's lifespan. These great powers really are brash, acting so recklessly. Of course, facing an existence like Guan, even if they hide their true forms, Guan would find a way to locate them. Back in the seven-star spirit realm, the thousand-faced divine lord who escaped from Guan's clutches could also be located by him now, but seeing him behave, Guan didn't pursue him. Immortal cultivation was never easy. If one could recognize the situation and act accordingly, Guan would still admire that. To date, regarding the thousand-faced divine lord escaping from his hands, frankly, he was somewhat looking forward to seeing how far the thousand-faced divine lord could go. Guan stood up and vanished from the rock. In the main city of the Broken Sea domain, inside a dim grand hall, Domain Master Qing Songzi stood on the steps, hands clasped behind his back, his eyebrows deeply furrowed. How come it suddenly went quiet? Could it be that even Elder Luo Shuzi is not a match for Sword Venerable Fudao? Even if he is not, there shouldn't be silence, Qing Songzi thought, frowning. Dressed in a green robe, he exuded a calm demeanor, appearing in his 40s, with the oppressive aura of someone in power. He possessed the cultivation level of the 7th layer of the carefree primordial immortal realm and was recognized by the Holy Court as the domain master of Broken Sea Domain. He had never felt as anxious as he did today. The sea-breaking rift was just below. If there were any battles, he would definitely detect them immediately. He now dared not extend his divine sense into the rift for fear of provoking trouble. Even if Luo Shuzi failed, Sword Venerable Fudao likely wouldn't dare confront the Holy Court directly. He just needed to pretend ignorance. Just then a series of footsteps approached. Lu Xinyi came walking briskly, leaving a trail of afterimages. He stopped before the steps, raising his hand in salute to Qing Songzi and smiling. "I wonder why the elder has summoned me. What is the matter?" Qing Songzi turned to look at him, revealing a smile as he said, "I and your father are fellow disciples. What elder are you speaking to?" "That's too formal. Call me your teacher uncle from now on." "Teacher uncle." Lu Xinyi responded, his mind already calculating. The other clearly needed him, which was why he showed such an attitude. As for the great Nether Saint King behind Qing Songzi, he was also aware. Could it be that the main city of the Broken Sea Domain was thwarted by Sword Venerable Fudao? Lu Xinyi inwardly chuckled, knowing that over the years, many of the Holy Court's pieces infiltrated the Taizong continent and even the Supreme Sect to investigate Sword Venerable Fudao. He could guess that the great Nether Saint King was somewhat unrelenting. The Great Cold Demon Sect was a powerful weapon in the hands of the great Nether Saint King, gaining considerable power and authority by performing numerous dirty tasks for the Holy Court. Hence, his power continued to grow, and the errors he made weren't likely to shake his position. Indeed, the calamity in the Broken Sea Domain was seen as a mistake by the great Nether Saint King by the Holy Court, but such a mistake wasn't considered significant. Even several could deduce the great Nether Saint King's plans against the Candle World Saint King, many choosing to turn a blind eye. Weighing the ruling Holy King against the reincarnated Holy King was an easy choice. Qing Songzi looked at Lu Xinyi and asked with a smile, "Sword Venerable Fudao refuses to accept the Qi fortune from the Holy Court. Having stayed in the Supreme Sect for so many years, what do you think should be done? Should he be left to his own devices, or should his background be investigated?" Lu Xinyi thought to himself as expected, and after pondering he said, "Teacher uncle, do you think Sword Venerable Fudao is formidable?" "Of course he's formidable beyond my comparison," Qing Songzi answered without hesitation. Lu Xinyi continued, "Since that is the case, why bother to offend him? Wouldn't it be sufficient to just manage the Broken Sea Domain well?" Qing Songzi frowned. Lu Xinyi meaningfully said, "Sword Venerable Fudao appeared in the land of the reincarnation of the Candle World Saint King. These two very likely have a connection. Why Sword Venerable Fudao hides his identity is worth considering. Teacher uncle, my father once said, surviving in the Holy Court is like walking on thin ice. No matter how high one's cultivation level is, staying alive is the most important." Chapter 321 Evil Tree. The events that took place within the sea-breaking rift did not spread, and just like that, a divine immortal of wondrous Dharma disappeared without a trace. Since then, Guan distinctly felt that the number of people on the continent probing for the Sword Venerable Fudao had sharply decreased. It seemed that the master of the Broken Sea Domain had already made a choice. If the Holy Court truly stopped scheming against Guan, he naturally didn't bother to hold a grudge. Living in peace was what he hoped for. A period of peace came to the Broken Sea Domain, and despite great talents and powers continuously emerging in the world, Guan hid within the Supreme Sect and observed the world's vicissitudes with a smile. In the blink of an eye, 50 years swiftly passed. Guan returned to the Third Medicine Valley, and looking at his attribute panel, a smile spread across his face. Name, Guan, lifespan, 293/470-569, 402. Today's harvest from the Outer World Cave had allowed him to gain nearly 40 million years of lifespan in one go. It was so exhilarating. This was still the first large-scale herbal harvest from the Outer World Cave. Every year he would plant high-ranked medicinal herbs in the Outer World Cave, and the income from lifespan would only increase more and more. 50 years had gone by, and the Supreme Sect was flourishing. Nowadays, in terms of paper strength, it was one of the top great sects on the continent, with only the 7-star spirit realm comparable. The servant disciples within the Third Medicine Valley had also been largely replaced. Some left and others came. The scene in the Medicine Valley was much the same as it was 50 years ago. Along the way, Guan greeted his disciples non-stop. This scene left Ji Xiaoyu standing before the pavilion feeling somewhat dazed. After being away for so many years, the fact that the valley remained unchanged made her feel incredibly moved. Guan made his way to the pavilion, sizing up Ji Xiaoyu and smiled. Many years have passed, yet your aura is even more impressive. Ji Xiaoyu, dressed in green garments, still had an elegant charm. Her flowing clothes resembled a skirt, creating illusions of drifting clouds as they billowed in the wind. She fixed Guan with her gaze and said, "So many years have passed, and you are still at the core formation realm, while I have become a divinity transformation cultivator. Do you regret it?" "Regret? How could that be possible? Following you out, always encountering danger?" Guan mentally complained. Over the years, he had often used his divine thought to keep watch over Ji Xiaoyu, and he even acted a few times to ensure she always escaped danger by a hair's breadth. He knew all too well what she had been through. "I don't regret it at all. I've had a good time these years." As for cultivation level, slow and steady wins the race. "I will condense the nascent soul sooner or later," Guan replied casually. Ji Xiaoyu scrutinized him closely, and upon confirming that he wasn't lying, a smile appeared on her face. What she admired most was Guan's temperament. She had never seen him angry or envious, as he always seemed to be smiling. "Shall we talk upstairs?" Guan asked with a smile, knowing Ji Xiaoyu had a lot to say. For Guan, the journeys Ji Xiaoyu had embarked upon these past years couldn't compare to the distance of a single step for him, but for her, these decades were lengthy, and he would occasionally hear her murmuring to a campfire when alone. The stealing the 5 elements who had been tailing Ji Xiaoyu had never shown up, merely escorting her in secret for a part of her journey. Once they were upstairs in the house, Ji Xiaoyu began recounting her experiences throughout the years. Her stories were rich, with demon slaying, thrilling adventures, and even encounters with old grudges. Guan listened intently, chiming in from time to time, keeping Ji Xiaoyu's desire to share stories high. After more than an ancient hour, Ji Xiaoyu finally finished telling her tales. Guan exclaimed, "How exciting, just like the stories narrated by storytellers." Ji Xiaoyu laughed, "I obtained the inheritance left by someone from a previous life. The journey was worthwhile, but it's unknown how far I can go. It should be the second layer of the immortal path." Guan had seen that secret realm, created by a loose immortal, which meant that Ji Xiaoyu's predecessor's highest cultivation realm reached the loose immortal realm. For the current Ji Xiaoyu, how formidable a loose immortal was practically out of reach. Guan asked with a smile, "What are your plans going forward?" Ji Xiaoyu replied, "Settle for a few decades before considering another journey. The ranking competition is about to begin, which is a good opportunity to enjoy the excitement. The Supreme Sect is not what it used to be, and this ranking competition will surely be lively. It's said that a loose immortal joined the Supreme Sect in the last couple of years. Have you heard about the loose immortal?" As Guan spoke of the competition, he became more talkative. Ji Xiaoyu watched him with a slight smile on her lips. This guy still loved to see the world bustling. Listening to Guan talk about the highlights of the ranking competition, along with the sounds of insects and voices from outside the window, Ji Xiaoyu's heart fell into tranquility. Having witnessed the world's turmoil, she now felt a sense of peace inside, free of any pressure or concern. After spending the afternoon with Ji Xiaoyu, Guan finally left the Third Medicine Valley and headed to the Mystic Valley's 8 scenic caves underground. He arrived in front of the green vine tree, where a large cauldron was set up, surrounded by various instruments. Over the past 30 years, he had been studying the art of artifact refining. He wasn't after creating any phenomenal Dharma treasures, but rather sought realizations through the process of forging. The Dharma treasures he had forged by now were coveted by the Supreme Sect, but he didn't hand them over to the sect, instead tossing them to the Immortal Seeking Island for sale, exchanging the spirit stones received for seeds and refining materials. With a cultivation of divine thought immortal status, it wasn't difficult for Guan to forge immortal treasures, but creating Supreme Immortal Path treasures was still out of reach. Supreme Immortal Path treasures could only be created by immensely powerful beings standing at the peak of the 9 heavens of the Immortal Path, the crystallization of a lifetime's Tao from a major Immortal Path power. In the entire Great Heavenly Spirit Land, forces that owned Supreme Immortal Path treasures were territorial overlords, and those who could fully wield the power of such treasures were few and far between. At least Guan had yet to see such individuals. Long Zhan had one such treasure. When he reached the pinnacle of the 9 heavens of the Immortal Path, he could suppress an entire universe with just one treasure, incredibly formidable. Guan had just approached the cauldron when it, along with the surrounding instruments, began to blaze with fire. 2 vines stretched from behind, beginning to massage Guan's shoulders. "Master, that guy, are you really not going to intervene?" The voice of the green vine tree sounded, still similar to Jianghu but weaker. Guan replied, "It's fine, it's impossible for the other party to step foot here." Because of the influence of Sword Venerable Fudao, the reputation of the Supreme Sect had far outshone its actual strength. Thus, the upcoming ranking competition also attracted a multitude of overseas cultivators and demons. Among them was a presence that made the green vine tree afraid, and Guan had already located that presence. It was a shape-shifting tree demon, its cultivation having reached the wandering immortal stage, who was currently hiding its cultivation level and joining the ranking competition as a Mahayana cultivator. A wandering immortal posed no threat to Guan and therefore he didn't care. What he did care about was another individual. Someone from the Immortal Spirit Dynasty had arrived at the Supreme Sect, whose cultivation level was that of a carefree primordial immortal, but had hidden it, presenting themselves merely as an ordinary loose immortal. Of course, even a loose immortal was enough to be treated as an honored guest by the Supreme Sect. Guan was curious about the purpose of the Immortal Spirit Dynasty's visit. There would be quite a show at this ranking competition. "Master, can you subdue him?" the green vine tree cautiously asked. Guan, thinking it was worried, grunted in affirmation. He felt the vines on his shoulders tremble, followed by the voice of green vine tree, "Then can you capture him and let me eat him?" Guan was taken aback and turned to look at the green vine tree in surprise. It had been so afraid moments ago and now it wanted to eat someone? He had almost forgotten that the green vine tree came from the Thousand Autumn Pavilion, a demon path sect, so naturally it could be an evil tree. "Don't get any funny ideas or watch out, I might eat you instead," Guan said in no good mood. The green vine tree used to love eating lamb. If its murderous nature wasn't restrained, Guan feared for his disciples' safety. He kept the green vine tree mainly for the production of the green vine fruit. To him now, the green vine tree was not indispensable. Seemingly sensing Guan's displeasure, the green vine tree fell silent, and the two vines massaging his shoulders became even more careful. The next day at noon, Guan arrived at the outer gate city riding the blood prison Great Saint. The city was overcrowded, and even the air was bustling with a multitude of cultivators and demons. 50 years had passed and Guan had even more acquaintances in the city. Wherever he went, people greeted him. He also encountered the son of Zuijian, Zuolin, who was also Li Ya's childhood friend. Not practicing the sword Dao, he was a genuine prodigy. Now, Zuolin had completely abandoned the sword Dao and become a modestly famous talent. The two would meet every year and their relationship remained strong. Zuolin began to complain about his father straight away. It was once again because of Sword Venerable Fudao that had offended a great cultivator. Day and night, he guarded the heaven-cutting axe. Despite this, Zuijian had offended quite a few, resulting in frequent intrusions and investigations into the Zhuo family. Luckily, with Sword Venerable Fudao around, no one dared make a move. Still, the Zhuo family lived in constant fear of a catastrophe befalling them. Suddenly, Guan thought he should probably give Zuijian some advice. To be honest, he clearly saw the devotion in Zuijian's attitude and felt it deserved recognition. He should take the opportunity to guide him, not letting Zuijian's efforts go to waste. After chatting for a while, they parted ways. Guan, using his mind, communicated with the blood prison Great Saint, who changed direction. The crowd surged, vendors on both sides shouted continuously, and Guan rode on the back of the blood prison Great Saint, looking curiously at everything along the way. This feeling was much like attending a fair. Unlike other meetings, the ranking competition was held every 100 years, making it the most important event for the Supreme Sect and even the entire Taizong continent, with a liveliness that couldn't be compared to any other time. The arrival of many sects also brought many new items. Guan looked at his retreating figure, thinking to himself that this person was quite agreeable. He had assumed that the people from the Immortal Spirit Dynasty were all haughty as they seldom interacted with the outside world. Yet today's encounter had given Guan a different perspective on the Immortal Spirit Dynasty. Guan looked distantly towards the heaven-cutting axe, where Zuijian stood by the axe side, guarding it day in and day out for 10 years. Now, when one mentioned the heaven-cutting axe, it was hard to bypass Zuijian. Guan's thoughts stirred, his divine thought mixed with powerful sword intent boldly invading Zuijian's eyes, causing him to become dazed. Immediately after, Guan rode the blood prison Great Saint in another direction, without approaching the platform. Zhang Xianwang, not yet far off, stopped in his tracks and turned around, his eyes widening in astonishment. At the same time, a sky-reaching sword intent erupted from Zuijian, causing cultivators nearby to swiftly retreat, figures materializing out of nowhere around the heaven-cutting axe, isolating Zuijian. Zuijian's eyes lost their luster, and he stood there dazed, sword intent rising from below, billowing his robes and hair. Feeling the sword intent belonging to Sword Venerable Fudao, the great cultivators of the Supreme Sect all breathed a sigh of relief. What's happened to him? It's the sword intent of Sword Venerable Fudao. Feel it carefully, Zuijian's sword chi is growing stronger. Is Sword Venerable Fudao giving him guidance? If it's him, I can understand. After all, he has stood guard here for so many years. So he wasn't lying. Did Sword Venerable Fudao really pat his shoulder back then? The cultivators murmured among themselves as Zuijian was immersed in the sword intent, unable to extricate himself. Far beneath the heavenly repair platform, Zhang Xianwang felt the sword intent emanating from Zuijian's body, and his mind was profoundly shaken. He was, after all, a carefree primordial immortal, yet he could not detect Sword Venerable Fudao making his move. He even failed to comprehend how Sword Venerable Fudao's sword intent could lead Zuijian into a state of path enlightenment. At this moment he realized his own insignificance. The carefree primordial immortal was merely at ease. He had not yet reached the stage of pondering the great Tao. In his peripheral vision was the retreating figure of Guan, who nonetheless had not caught his attention. He couldn't imagine that Guan, who had chosen a different path from his own, was the very Sword Venerable Fudao who had brought him such astonishment. Guan did not look back, keeping his achievements and fame concealed. Hearing the distant clamor, the Blood Prison Great Saint also did not turn his head, knowing that the legendary Sword Venerable Fudao was right behind him. When immortals intervene, mortals tend to fuss over nothing. How tedious. After seeing Zhang Xianwang, Guan continued roaming around the city, purchased many items and then returned to the valley. Back in the Third Medicine Valley, Guan found an X-inn and handed over the things he had purchased. The Third Medicine Valley also stored many medicinal herbs, elixirs, secret books and magic artifacts, allowing servant disciples to purchase them directly at lower prices than in the city. This was a benefit Guan bestowed upon his disciples. Comparing the prices, they grew even more grateful to him. Such deeds meant that even after servant disciples completed their foundation establishment and later saw Guan, they would still address him respectfully as master. After arranging all of this, Guan prepared to go upstairs and read. Coincidentally, Xinjin arrived at that moment. Guan had no choice but to stop and wait for her. Over these years, Xinjin had not neglected her proper affairs and had even passed on her insights to the Supreme Sect, helping to create many transmission jade slips. These allowed disciples to cultivate not just by understanding the text, but by visualizing the cultivation scenes, a merit that garnered her true respect within the Supreme Sect. Come upstairs quick, there's something great. Xinjin said in a rush and then hurried upstairs with Guan following behind. Inside the room, once the door was closed, Guan felt the aura below grow faint. It was obvious that Ji Xiaoyu was attempting to eavesdrop again. Reaching the table, Xinjin pulled out a painting and quickly spread it open. Guan walked over to look and saw an ancient painting, depicting many naked people kneeling on the ground, waving towards the sky, where a group of people robed in splendor floated amidst the clouds as if they were immortal beings. I previously came across an incomplete ancient scroll and have been analyzing it daily, imagining its complete scene. Perhaps there is a hidden guidance within the Tao leading me, said Xinjin, brimming with pride. It was imagined? Upon closer inspection, Guan noticed that the contours of the environment captured in the painting contained the mysteries of heaven and earth rules. Could it be that there was indeed a Tao guiding Xinjin? Something wasn't right. Why would it be Xinjin? Guan began to doubt whether Xinjin truly could reach enlightenment through music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He had earlier made a move that had shocked Zhang Xianwang, and now it was Xinjin's turn to shock him. To grasp the heaven and earth rules without stepping into the immortal path realm? That was preposterous. Could she be the reincarnation of an immortal? But that shouldn't be the case. If she were the reincarnation of a great power, Guan would likely have perceived some hints, just like with Ji Xiaoyu and Yang Jian. No matter how he looked at her, Xinjin did not appear to have a significant background. Chapter 323 The Path of Destiny. Guan couldn't help but use lifespan detection on Xinjin. Xinjin, Divinity Transformation Realm, second layer 329/1200/5800. Her maximum lifespan had increased by more than 1,000 years. Could it be that she also possessed an innate enlightenment saint body? Filled with curiosity, Guan decided to observe Shenzhen more in the future. As Shenzhen began to narrate the process of her painting, Guan carefully looked at the scroll before him. It seemed to depict a mortal pleading for the compassion of an immortal, but the execution was quite strange. The person kneeling on the ground was smiling, while the high and mighty immortal had a frown. The outline of the clouds, the lines of the mountains, the currents in the rivers, etc., all were manifestations of the rules of heaven and earth. Once the scroll was unfurled, the actual rules of heaven and earth subtly drew closer to it. In the eyes of a divine thought true immortal, the world became both bizarre and splendid. Shenzhen, immersed in it, couldn't feel the changes in the rules of heaven and earth and continued to excitedly share her creative process. Guan began to probe into the causality surrounding Shenzhen and saw all of the experiences of her life. He suddenly realized that, without being aware of it, he had become the person most closely tied to the causality of Shenzhen's life. The relationship between Shenzhen and the Daotian sect grew increasingly distant. Although she was the daughter of the sect hierarch, her father had many children. Without regular contact, the bond between father and daughter became ever more distant, with her mother having passed away long ago. Guan suddenly had a bold thought. Could it be that Shenzhen was influenced by him? After all, he was a divine thought true immortal. Even though he concealed his cultivation level, his essence of life was still different from the surrounding disciples. Over the years, the time it took for disciples to enter Medicine Valley and complete their apprenticeship had become increasingly short, which could also be due to his influence. The degree to which Shenzhen had reached was not to be underestimated. Her innate comprehension was remarkable. But without Guan, it might have been very difficult for her to achieve this step. Gradually, Guan's understanding of the way of cause and effect deepened. On reflection, Guan had influenced the entire Supreme Sect. Regardless of the reason, the Supreme Sect indeed had entered an unprecedented phase of rapid development. After a while, Shenzhen's voice brought Guan's thoughts back to the present. Hey, are you listening? Guan turned to look at Shenzhen, who had a gritted teeth expression that didn't look fierce, but rather made Guan want to reach out and pinch her. I'm listening. You are really incredible. I can't understand how you did it. If what you say is true, you might really have the talent for enlightenment, Guan praised. Upon hearing this, a broad smile broke across Shenzhen's face. She chuckled proudly and said, "This painting is for you then. I'll continue to meditate." With that, she turned and left. Guan didn't see her off, but instead turned his gaze back to the scroll on the table. He felt the energy from below returning to normal. Ji Xiaoyu was once again immersed in her cultivation, but he didn't care. He sat on the chair looking at the scroll, lost in thought. The influence he had on his surroundings wasn't just active from his side but also aided by the momentum of heaven and earth, which gave him a deeper understanding of the ways of heaven and earth. He had this inexplicable feeling that he wanted to hide, but the way of heaven and earth did not want him to hide, hence it influenced the environment around him. The great momentum of heaven and earth was like a surging tide. The nets of cause and effect were like heaven-trapping webs. All beings could neither resist them nor escape. Everything has its advantages and disadvantages. While helping the environment around him, he would also be drawn into more webs of causality. In that moment, Guan suddenly understood why many great powers retreated into seclusion indefinitely. It might not be merely because enlightenment took so much time. Just like the great cold demon sect, there must be many great cultivators hidden away in seclusion, who had evaded disaster precisely because they withdrew from the world. Is this not a way of surviving? Guan was not fearful because of this revelation. Rather, he was contemplating how heaven and earth operated the laws of causality and destiny, creating a set of rules that most beings fear. Destiny. Guan never believed in an irresistible destiny. That which is irresistible is only so because it still lies within the rules. If one's strength surpasses the rules, how can one be manipulated? As for how to transcend destiny and surpass the ways of heaven and earth, that was the real direction Guan needed to think about. He sat in his room without moving all night, and early the next day he rode the blood prison great saint to the outer gate city to watch the excitement. A night had passed, and Zuijian was still in deep enlightenment, with over 100 great cultivators from the Supreme Sect protecting him and temporarily suspending the inheritance assessment of the heaven-cutting axe, not allowing anyone to approach Zuijian. Zuijian's cultivation level was not worth mentioning in the current Supreme Sect, but as he received the sword intent inheritance of the sword Venerable Fudao, it had a completely different significance. The Supreme Sect placed great importance on it as a way to show respect to the sword Venerable Fudao. As Guan arrived at the outer gate city not long after, he encountered a middle-aged man accompanied by several young men and women. They were walking among the crowd, looking around curiously, finding everything new and amazing. "Chuanyue, long time no see." A voice reached Chuanyue's ears, prompting him to turn his head instinctively, only to see the Blood Prison Great Saint standing next to Guan. The Blood Prison Great Saint was as tall as an adult and had a domineering presence, but Chuanyue had seen larger demon pets and mounts, so he was not flustered. Chuanyue looked at Guan with doubt and asked, "You are?" The fact that the other person was riding a mount meant he must be a cultivator, and Chuanyue had to approach him cautiously. The descendants of the Chuanyue family following behind were just as curious, sizing up Guan, surprised to find that someone in the Supreme Sect knew their grandfather. Guan smiled and said, "Have you forgotten? I met you in your home when you were only 15 years old. You kept nagging your grandfather to take you on the path of immortal cultivation." Chuanyue was stunned, then his eyes widened in astonishment and he asked, "You're the person who visited my grandfather back then? How come you, so young?" Guan asked, "How is your grandfather?" Chuanyue hurriedly replied, "He's quite well, spends his days cultivating and drinking tea with no need to worry about anything." The descendants of the Chuanyue family looked at one another in confusion. Their grandfather's grandfather was the primordial ancestor of their family, wasn't he? They had only seen Xiaochuan once or twice, and in their minds Xiaochuan was amiable, but with a status far beyond theirs, they could only feel reverence. After a conversation, Guan learned that Chuanyue had come to bring his descendants to broaden their horizons, while also seeking opportunities. Guan took out a token from his sleeve and tossed it to Chuanyue. If their aptitude is not exceptionally outstanding and there are no other connections, they can seek to become servant disciples at the Chores Hall. With this token of mine, you can enter the Third Medicine Valley. Chuanyue instinctively caught the token and was about to inquire further when the Blood Prison Great Saint took a step forward and brushed past him. Chuanyue turned to look at Guan's retreating figure and asked, "Senior, how should I address you?" Guan simply raised his hand and made no sound. Chuanyue couldn't help but stare at the token in his hand, deeply puzzled. At that moment, another male cultivator came over and laughed. "Brother, you're in luck to be connected to the Third Medicine Valley. With such good fortune, foundation establishment is as good as certain, making a solid foundation for your path of immortal cultivation." Foundation establishment. The descendants of the Chuanyue family immediately brightened up, their breathing quickening. Chuanyue quickly saluted the male cultivator and inquired about the situation in the Third Medicine Valley. The male cultivator gave a rough introduction, mentioning thousands of servant disciples, countless medicinal herbs, and the high-ranking members of the Supreme Sect that could be seen in the valley every day, among others. The information left Chuanyue dumbstruck. Just who was the person they had just met to have such influence? Unable to contain himself, Chuanyue asked, "Do you know the person we just met?" The male cultivator shook his head with a smile, clapped Chuanyue on the shoulder, and walked away, leaving Chuanyue even more curious and in awe of Guan. The now distant Guan couldn't help but smile wryly to himself. That kid has always loved playing these little tricks back in Medicine Valley. The cultivator who had introduced Chuanyue to the Third Medicine Valley was precisely a disciple who had graduated from there. By now, the number of disciples who had graduated from the Third Medicine Valley and Mystic Valley had reached tens of thousands, which is why Guan often encountered familiar faces. Guan's reputation had also spread far and wide, and considering the number of foundation establishment pills needed by these disciples, who else within the inner and outer sects could supply them? Moreover, over the years, Guan had indeed made no additional demands of the servant disciples, which is what made him admirable. Guan soon arrived at the book collection hall, ready to chat with the book enthusiast there for a while. 7 days later, the Golden List Grand Tournament officially commenced. The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord also represented the Supreme Sect in the battle. With Liya unable to return, the Supreme Sect needed the combat strength of a wandering immortal. How the Supreme Sect persuaded the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, Guan did not know. He had not watched at that time and wasn't interested in finding out now. That day, LV Badian came to find Guan, pulling him who was watching the Golden List combat into the attic. Aside from the new disciples who were curious, many people ignored it as commonplace. Once seated inside the house, LV Badian, unusually, did not discuss official matters but instead talked about his son, LV Xian. That kid really is blindly loyal to Li Shendao. I have no idea what he's thinking. No matter how the Taizong dynasty develops, it remains the world of the Li family. What could he possibly gain? LV Badian complained indignantly. Guan was reluctant to comment on their father-son matters. It must be said that LV Badian and Li Xiandao were similar, both in their actions and their relationships with their sons. Originally, Lia also despised Li Xiandao, while LV Xian still seeks the life of LV Badian to this day. Guan had no interest in untangling their causality, an outsider's clarity was useless on family matters. Recently, Li Xiandao arranged for him to go to the Domain Master City of Broken Sea Domain. I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse. The establishment of the Broken Sea Domain Master City makes me feel like it's targeted against the sword Venerable Fudao, LV Badian said with concern. Guan inquired, why do you think so? The Great Cold Demon sect appeared long before this domain was established, which means that even though the Holy Court sets the order, it does not manage specific locales. When I put myself in the place of the Holy Court, no matter how I speculate, establishing the Broken Sea Domain seems to be a means of defense, while also investigating the sword Venerable Fudao. In that case, why don't you go to the Heaven-Cutting Axe and ask the sword Venerable Fudao to leave? Nonsense. Don't spout such things in the future. LV Badian glared and spoke sternly. Guan smiled helplessly. This man was prone to irritation. LV Badian, following that, brought up Li Lingtian. Over the years, Li Lingtian had gained a great reputation, having previously participated in and topped the Golden List Grand Tournament and the 100 Clans Grand Meeting, creating a bigger sensation than in Hao and LV Xian of years past. To this, Guan had no particular stance. With Li Lingtian's return to the Taizong continent, it was obvious he was targeting Yang Jian. Guan found it hard to take an interest in the squabbles of the younger generations. What he cared more about was the identity of the mysterious great cultivator who had arrived at the Supreme Sect that day. Chapter 324 Heaven Sect, Immortal King Legend. After LV Badian left, Guan followed down the staircase, continuing to watch the excitement. Now, the Mystic Heart Realm combat was underway, its spectacle reflected upon the sky, inciting copious discussions among the disciples in the valley. How formidable! Is this what the Mystic Heart Realm is like? What's this? Just wait until you see the Mahayana Realm combat. That is truly thrilling, not to mention the Immortal combat. Even here within the valley you can feel a sense of oppression. It's an eye-opener. I wonder if we'll ever reach this stage? How could we not? Cultivate diligently, enter the Third Medicine Valley, and your starting point will already be higher than 90% of the disciples. That's right. Even if one is a scion of a noble family without sufficient aptitude, they start as servant disciples too. Do you know about Li Ye from Divine Exotic City? He's my master's junior brother, and they entered the Medicine Valley on the same day. I know. My master once said that Li Ye often used to cry, feeling hopeless about his future. It was my master who inspired him. As the disciples conversed, their topics began to digress. The Third Medicine Valley's replacement of old and new was rapid, with many new disciples joining each year. The number of disciples registered in the valley had already surpassed 1,800. Guan naturally mingled among the groups of disciples without causing a disturbance. They didn't need to stand to greet each other or harbor suspicions, a mood that arose from Guan's amiable manner, which also shaped the disciples' approach to interaction and life. Guan sat beside an Xan and inquired about the previous battles. Before an Xan could reply, Yuanying came and sat down on Guan's other side, eagerly jumping into the conversation and briefing him on the situation. Her excitement stemmed from the great cultivators of the Star Sea congregations who also came to participate, including a senior she admired. She believed that this senior could capture first place on the Immortal list. To this, Guan merely smiled. This Immortal list tournament was a gathering of sleeping dragons and crouching tigers, with many who concealed their true cultivation level and identities. Aspiring to the first place was very difficult. The arrival of a divine immortal of wondrous Dharma to participate baffled Guan. What was their reasoning? No matter how you looked at it, the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma's participation in the Immortal list tournament seemed to devalue their status, and they might even provoke the sword Venerable Fudao, leading to a deadly disaster. Guan couldn't understand. The Immortal Spirit Dynasty sent people, the Holy Court also sent delegates, and now, the mysterious divine immortal of wondrous Dharma appeared as well. But what comes is to be accepted. Currently, the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma still remained a mysterious presence, seen but never met. The carefree primordial immortal stood as the highest entity the Immortal cultivation sects could reach. As for the Tao Void mysterious immortal, who existed one realm higher, Guan had not yet encountered any. An Xan thought that the nine-fingered Divine Lord could win first place, sparking a debate with Yu Yingying. Given Enzin's temperament, she naturally could not out-argue Yu Yingying. Guan couldn't just watch his precious disciple get pushed around, so he joined the debate, quickly causing Yu Yingying's face to flush red. 2 days swiftly passed by. On this day in the early morning hours, although dawn had just broken, many figures were already bustling about in the city. Within a narrow alley, Zhang Xianwang from the Immortal Spirit Dynasty stopped in his tracks. Tilting his head slightly, he glanced askew at the person behind him. "Why do you follow me?" Zhang Xianwang asked calmly. Standing behind him was a white-haired old man, exuding an air of immortality. His mere presence compelled the passing cultivators at the alleyway entrance to take another look. The white-haired elder stared at Zhang Xianwang and inquired, "Why has one from the Immortal Dynasty come to this place?" Zhang Xianwang turned to face the elder, his expression indifferent as he countered, "If you do not answer, how shall I?" The elder replied, "You may call me Heaven Sect." Heaven Sect. Zhang Xianwang's face paled, a look of incredulity spreading across it as he exclaimed, "Heaven Sect? How is that possible? 50,000 years ago, had you not already?" Heaven Sect interrupted, "It's your turn to answer now." Zhang Xianwang's gaze flickered. He remained silent for a moment. "You probably don't want to cause a conflict here. Surely there are holy court cultivators within the Supreme Sect." The emotionless tone of Heaven Sect sent chills down one's spine. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Xianwang said, "I'm here to recruit Sword Venerable Fudao." "And you?" Heaven Sect replied, "I come for an old acquaintance." "An old acquaintance?" "Oh. Since our purposes do not conflict, let's not disturb each other any further." Having said that, Heaven Sect turned to leave. Just then a voice called out, "Taoist friend Zhang, what brings you here?" The speaker was none other than Guan, approaching Heaven Sect head-on, the two passing each other. Heaven Sect, Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm 7th Layer 789023/1700000/1750000. A formidable old monster who has lived for 788,000 years. On the 7th layer of the Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm? That's frightening, almost catching up to me. Guan thought to himself as he looked at Zhang Xianwang, his face breaking into a surprised smile. Seeing Guan, Zhang Xianwang couldn't help but smile. After Heaven Sect left the alley, Guan then asked, "Who was that person just now? Were they troubling you? Do you need me to contact the Deacon Hall?" Hearing this made Zhang Xianwang smile even more. He laughingly said, "No trouble at all. But do you know what his cultivation level is?" "What cultivation level? Divinity Transformation Realm? Void Crossing Realm? Or Unification?" As he continued, Guan's voice rose several notches in apprehension. Zhang Xianwang, bemused, changed the subject. "What brings you here?" Guan responded, "I came to purchase seeds for medicinal herbs." "And you?" The two began to chat, and Zhang Xianwang, favorably impressed by Guan, did not fuss about their disparity in cultivation level and conversed as equals. After a while, Guan asked, "You seem quite impressive. Did you sign up for the Immortal List tournament?" "No, I'm here for a different matter." "May I help you with it?" "There's no need for that." "All right then, I won't disturb you any further." Guan bowed in farewell, then departed. Zhang Xianwang watched him go, a hint of hesitation in his heart. Guan pondered why Zhang Xianwang sought to recruit him. He had previously thought the Immortal Spirit Dynasty was rather xenophobic and unlikely to be recruiting him into their ranks, meaning it must be some other scheming. After leaving the alley, Guan continued wandering about the city, planning to buy some interesting trinkets for Tian Yaoer to lift her spirits. Managing the outer world cave was quite taxing. Guan had to show favor to keep her from feeling disheartened. Just after passing 2 streets, Guan spotted Heaven Sect. As they were about to pass by each other, Heaven Sect suddenly raised a hand and held onto Guan's shoulder. Guan quirked an eyebrow, feeling uneasy about being touched on the shoulder. He turned his head toward Heaven Sect, asking in surprise, "You, huh? Are you the same person from before?" Heaven Sect's eyes were fixed on the Immortal King crown on Guan's forehead, his gaze piercing. Guan felt his heart drop. Could it be that this person saw through the disguise of the Immortal King crown? "Leave the Supreme Sect tonight and I will find you, offering you a chance for rebirth anew." With these words, Heaven Sect turned and walked away. Guan was confused. From Heaven Sect's statement, it seemed that he hadn't guessed that Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao. But what was the reason then? As Guan watched him leave, continuing on his way, he pondered the matter. Not far away within the crowd, Zhang Xianwang frowned and ultimately sighed, heading in the opposite direction from Heaven's Sect. The afternoon's combat had reached its pinnacle with two Nirvana realm great cultivators clashing, one of whom was from the Supreme Sect. Naturally, both hailed from the Ocean Cultivators. The two Nirvana realm great cultivators employed spells, divine skills, demon pets, formations and various other arts, comprehensively displaying to the spectators what it meant to be an immortal cultivator. Within the same realm, the higher one's level, the harder it was to slay the opponent, easily leading to a prolonged fierce battle. Guan found it highly entertaining. These individuals' cultivation levels were average, but their variety in battle was impressive. Guan, who could only defeat enemies instantly, couldn't experience this kind of thrill and could only feel envious. Until the night descended. Guan left Mystic Valley alone, flying towards the distance. His furrowed brow and tense demeanor were acted out deliberately. To demonstrate resolve, he sped up his flight. An hour later, Guan felt a surge of mana approaching and immediately prepared himself, yielding to the other's intention. At first glance, he seemed to plummet suddenly, landing in a forest. Once on the ground, he quickly stood up, pretending to be panicked. When he saw Heaven Sect's figure, he finally calmed down. Heaven Sect emerged from the darkness, speaking admiringly, "You are courageous indeed. It's no wonder you dared to accept the Immortal King crown. Though I do not know why it has not devoured you, regardless, you have received the recognition of an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. Do you have a master?" Guan shook his head. "I don't. Is the Immortal King crown the diadem on my head? I just stumbled upon it somewhere." He had already altered his own causality, so even Heaven Sect would be misled. Certainly, Heaven Sect had deduced through causality that Guan bought the Immortal King crown at a bargain price from a treasure pavilion. At that time, the crown seemed freshly unearthed and antiquated. How could a divine immortal of wondrous dharma see through the trickeries of a Tao void mysterious immortal? Do you wish to learn about the origins of the Immortal King crown? Once you know, you will not be able to maintain a life of tranquility, Heaven Sect said to Guan, his voice soft. Guan replied with a wry smile, "Can I go back now?" "No, once you have come, there is no turning back." "Then why do you ask?" "The way of Heaven Sect is the heavenly Tao, and the heavenly Tao must comply with the will of the people. Does this count?" "You came, so it counts." Guan felt that this person was being unreasonable, but since he sensed no hostility from Heaven Sect, he decided to listen to what was to be said. Tending to plants and occasionally craving some excitement wasn't too bad. He dared to face thrills also because Heaven Sect posed no threat to him. The Immortal King crown was forged by the first Immortal King of the great heavenly spirit land, who existed during the distant primordial times, when the heavens and earth first parted. Back then there was no holy court, no heavenly Tao rules in the outer heaven. Heaven Sect's voice filled with a mysterious aura, causing Guan to glimpse ancient scenes. The vast earth stretched out and colossal beasts roamed freely. There were no systems, no sects, no dynasties. He saw the silhouette of the Immortal King, blurred yet emanating a terrifying presence that reminded him of Long Zhan. This indicated that the Immortal King stood on the same level as Long Zhan, the 9th level of Immortal Path. When the Immortal King declared, "I am the Immortal King," thunder roared and the land was stricken by various natural disasters. Thinking too highly of himself, the Immortal King sought to challenge the heavenly Tao, striving to unify all creation, to venture into the outer heaven, and in doing so, offended the will of the heavens. He was ultimately afflicted by the curse of the heavenly Tao and, upon his impending death, sealed his own Tao within the Immortal King crown. The Immortal King crown is also the first ever Immortal Path Supreme Treasure in recorded history. At the very least, it is the first within the great heavenly spirit land. Heaven Sect's tone remained emotionless. Chapter 325 Heavenly Tao Inheritance. The First Immortal King, the First Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. Guan had felt a power from the Immortal King that transcended the epics, a mighty will that challenged the heavenly Tao. Heaven Sect continued to watch over Guan and spoke further. Ever since the fall of the Immortal King, the world was submerged by the oceans, ushering in an era of decline, but from destruction comes creation, and even in the most perilous environments, new beings are nurtured. Over the long epochs, many have emulated the Immortal King. The title he bestowed upon himself also became a glory pursued by later generations of cultivators. continually producing new immortal kings who challenged the authority of heavens and gradually increased the heavenly restraints imposed on this world. Epochs change and seas turn into mulberry fields. It wasn't until the birth of the Holy Court that beings finally had the chance to set foot in outer heaven. I inherited the legacy of Heaven Sect and took on its name. Heaven Sect can only be transmitted singularly, and I want to take you as my disciple, to make you the next Heaven Sect. By the end of this statement, the sound of the wind in the forest abruptly stopped, and the flora ceased their swaying. Guan widened his eyes and asked incredulously, "Me? Can I really do it? I'm just a mediocre talent." "What does talent matter? Heaven Sect has its own legacy that can help you break free from your shackles. You have been recognized by the Immortal King Crown. There must be something extraordinary about you, either an ancient treasure body or your soul harboring greater power. The Tao patterns on your forehead are the best proof," Heaven Sect stated, his eyes blazing as he gazed at Guan. Guan hesitated, "But I don't understand what being Heaven Sect entails. What are your ideals?" "Heaven Sect is about complying with the heavenly Tao. What you need to do is to follow the heavenly Tao. As long as you adhere to this, you will constantly surpass your limits and might even achieve immortality. If immortality is attainable, why do you want to pass it on to me? Because I have regrets and no longer wish to comply with the heavenly Tao." These words from Heaven Sect only added to Guan's confusion. "Are you trying to trap me or just deceive me?" Seeing through Guan's doubts, Heaven Sect looked up at the bright moon and explained, "I have lived for 780,000 years. In my life, every choice made was in compliance with the heavenly Tao. For the heavenly Tao, I have forsaken my family and dear friends. I have attained immortality and earned a revered holy name, but over time, I also grew regretful. I no longer yearn for immortality, but you probably still desire it." After hearing this, Guan's first thought was to pass on the legacy to those close to him. Heaven Sect continued, "My time is limited. After this Heavenly List conference concludes, I will relinquish the position of Heaven Sect. You have no choice, but you need to spend the remaining time adjusting your Taoist heart." With that, he vanished into the forest. Guan frowned, staying in his spot. "Don't tell anyone else, lest you reveal the fate and bring misfortune upon them." Muttering to himself, Guan scoffed internally, but he indeed felt a mysterious and familiar aura from Heaven Sect, similar to the light layer enveloping the great heavenly spirit land. Could the heavenly Tao really exist? Guan pondered a while in his place before finally leaving. In the following days, several great cultivators made their names known at the Heavenly List conference, with the most dominant being Heaven Sect, who self-proclaimed the title. Besides that, nobody knew much about his origins. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord also performed strongly, but he lacked the aura of being the foremost. Time flew swiftly. 2 months passed rapidly, and the Heavenly List conference continued. During this time, Supreme Sect was as lively as a festival every day. On this day, sensing something while reading under a tree, Shinshinzi looked up and saw an old man with white hair approaching from the valley entrance. "It's him? That presence?" Shinshinzi frowned thoughtfully. Heaven Sect felt his gaze and glanced at him. Their eyes met, and in an instant, Shinshinzi felt an immense terror, instinctively bowing his head. Heaven Sect withdrew his gaze and proceeded forward. His eyes swept Medicine Valley and soon locked onto Yang Jian, who was interacting with a disciple. Yang Jian, sensing something, turned his head and instinctively frowned when he saw Heaven Sect. This newcomer was no ordinary figure. Yang Jian, already at the void-crossing realm, had sharper senses than others at his level. From the first glance at Heaven Sect, he knew he was no match for the other. He wasn't panicked, for his master was still within Medicine Valley. Heaven Sect approached Yang Jian, with Shinshinzi watching him closely, debating whether to intervene. "Mystic Gang Dominator Body, have you felt the thickness of your soul?" Heaven Sect's first question startled Yang Jian. Yang Jian instinctively looked around. "The others can't hear our conversation, nor can they see me, except for that heavenly demon from Bitter Sea Buddha Sect, whom I intentionally allowed to see," Heaven Sect stated emotionlessly. The term heavenly demon alarmed Shinshinzi, who immediately bowed his head. Yang Jian, however, was not distracted by the mention of the heavenly demon. Suppressing his nervousness, he asked, "What exactly do you want?" Heaven Sect raised his right hand, revealing a golden jade stone in his palm, and said, "This object is for you. Just crush it and you will recall past life memories, regaining your true identity." "You have reincarnated 100 times? It's rare for someone to help you awaken the Mystic Gang Dominator Body. You might not get such a chance in future reincarnations." Yang Jian instinctively caught the golden jade stone, pressing further. Who are you really? What do you want? We fought side by side before, I was severely injured and you perished along with your path. I would never harm you. Once you awaken your past memories I will appear, said Heaven's Sect before turning to leave. Yang Jian looked at the golden jade stone in his hand, his mind in turmoil. Past life? Having read Investiture of the Gods and Journey to the West, he naturally believed in reincarnation, but now that it directly affected him, he couldn't help but feel unsettled. He took a deep breath, looked up, and saw Heaven's Sect heading towards his master's attic. He wondered if his master had noticed this person's approach. Previously, he believed his master was invincible, but Heaven's Sect's methods were beyond his comprehension. Except for him and Shin Shinzi, no one in the valley could see his movements. What kind of divine skill was this? Yang Jian couldn't understand and his wariness of Heaven's Sect piqued. He hesitated whether to warn his master, fearing he might ruin his master's plans if he had already noticed. After considering, he used his divine sense to follow. When his divine sense reached the attic, Guan showed no reaction, which reassured him, and he withdrew his divine sense. Heaven's Sect reached the attic. Stepping into the first-floor room, he muttered to himself, Reincarnation Path Emperor? Great karmic bonds, untouchable. I didn't expect this place to have so many significant karmic bonds. Could Sword Venerable Fudao be nearby? He then ascended the stairs. Walking through the door, Heaven's Sect appeared before Guan, who was at his desk, and then revealed his true form. His gaze fell on the supreme secret records in Guan's hand. A flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. He suddenly regretted choosing Guan. But by now he had no other options. Ahem, Heaven's Sect feigned a cough, causing Guan to instinctively look up, and then he stood up abruptly as though he had seen a ghost. How did you appear? Guan asked fearfully. Heaven's Sect replied irritably, You are soon to be the next Heaven's Sect, destined to wield the heavenly will. Stop reading books that corrupt the mind. Guan closed the supreme secret records, explaining, This book is different. Enough. Heaven's Sect cut him off, his gaze returning to the Immortal King Crown. You roam around wearing the Immortal King Crown all day, aren't you afraid of trouble? Not everyone is like me, without greed for Immortal Path's supreme treasures, especially since the Immortal King Crown is special, being one of the rare treasures not bound by the chief fortune of the Holy Court. The Holy Court manipulates? What do you mean? Guan asked, puzzled. Considering that nearly all Immortal Path's supreme treasures were presented by the Holy Court to help various congregations better manage the populace, Guan had obtained the Seven Stars Mirror from the Seven Stars Spirit Realm, and the Star Sea congregations also had their own supreme treasure. Yet almost no one attempted to steal their supreme treasures, indicating that some powerful force was balancing the greed of the great powers. Heaven's Sect explained, The vast majority of supreme treasures in the world are dispatched by the Holy Court, aiding the various sects in governing the populace. Of course, some treasures aren't under their control, and your Immortal King Crown is one such example. The Holy Court can trace all supreme treasures linked to Chi Fortune, which is why they are more wary of those they can't control. If someone discovers your Immortal King Crown, you're in major trouble, and even the Chi Fortune of Heaven's Sect can't protect you. Guan thought, I have another supreme treasure in my possession, and you haven't recognized it either. Chapter 326. Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court. Heaven's Sect lectured Guan at length, telling him how to act in the future and what pitfalls to avoid, as if imparting his last words. Despite thinking to himself, I, a divine thought true immortal, will not acknowledge you as my master, Guan considered retaining Heaven's Sect's legacy since Heaven's Sect was determined to abdicate his position and had decided to search for a successor on his behalf. Before leaving, Heaven's Sect said, Though there are many secrets about you that puzzle me, I have no desire to understand them anymore. Your disciple named Yang Jian, let him leave when he wishes to, do not stop him for he will bring you great trouble. Guan nodded, planning to dismiss him first. Heaven's Sect raised his right hand, a chi sphere formed in his palm and he threw it at Guan. With no time to dodge, Guan could only watch as the chi sphere entered his body, causing him to stiffen. Heaven's Sect looked at Guan, a smile appearing as he said, It's a pity I didn't formally accept you as my disciple. It's better this way to avoid my karma affecting you. With that, he turned and left, his figure passing directly through the door. Feeling his presence disappear, the color of panic finally vanished from Guan's face. Accept me as a disciple? Sorry, I am more afraid of getting involved in your karma. Guan touched his chest, extracting the chi sphere. He could feel the powerful force inside, no weaker than Heaven Sect's, and its chi fortune was something he currently couldn't fathom. Precisely because of this, he couldn't merge with the chi sphere. Let's call it Heaven Sect's chi fortune. Guan took out the 7 stars mirror and channeled the Heaven Sect's chi fortune into it. When he first obtained the 7 stars mirror, Guan had erased all the chi fortune, karma, and related restriction inside it. He treated not only Immortal Path Supreme treasures with such thoroughness but also any magic artifact. To avoid any accidents, he checked it again. Once sure there were no issues, he tucked the 7 stars mirror into his pocket and then sat down to continue reading. The grand ranking competition was still ongoing. As of today, the combatants were all immortal beings, unlike Liya, who relied on Immortal Path Supreme treasures from lower realms. Thus each combat was a testament to cultivation levels. When Heaven Sect broke into the top 10, he announced his withdrawal from the competition and then left. His departure destined to leave a lingering question in the grand ranking competition. No matter who won first place, they could not be considered the true victor of the competition in the minds of the people below. Heaven Sect was the most dominant presence in this grand ranking competition. Unequivocally, Guan and Yang Jian tacitly did not mention Heaven Sect and continued their cultivation as usual. Guan trained Yang Jian, not hoping he would serve him for life. When he saw through the karma of Yang Jian's past life, he was already prepared to let Yang Jian go. He even looked forward to seeing what impact Yang Jian would make on the world after he emerged magnificently. By the end of summer, the grand ranking competition concluded, and 9-fingered Divine Lord representing the Supreme Sect won the first place seat. Carefree primordial immortal Zhang Xianwang from the Immortal Spirit Dynasty did not participate. He lingered in the Supreme Sect, searching for Sword Venerable Fudao. Clearly wary of Holy Court, he acted very cautiously and dared not reveal his identity. After the grand ranking competition ended, Zhang Xianwang still did not leave. Until one night in early autumn. Zhang Xianwang was reading in his own room, with more than a dozen books about Sword Venerable Fudao spread out on the table. A cold breeze stirred the oil lamp on the table. Zhang Xianwang's eyes flickered, instinctively looking to the side. Immediately after, his pupils contracted sharply as he abruptly stood up. He saw a figure shrouded in purple demonic chi, his face's shock quickly turning to joy. The newcomer was Guan. His 9 extremes yin-yang body had advanced to the extreme path transforming form, allowing him to change into various forms, and even without transformation he could avoid karma calculation by using the extreme path transforming form. However, the image of Sword Venerable Fudao was too deeply ingrained, and he had to meet people in this guise. "Why are you looking for me?" Guan spoke, his voice hoarse, prompting Zhang Xianwang to imagine a face weathered by the vicissitudes of life. Zhang Xianwang promptly bowed, then introduced himself. He came from the Immortal Dynasty, sent by the master of the Immortal Dynasty, Yang Xian Emperor, to request Sword Venerable Fudao to take action on a matter. He did not immediately mention what it was but instead asked Guan's impression of the Holy Court. It upholds the great righteousness of protecting the mortals, yet shows disdain for mortal spirits with its pride. It has its good and bad sides. Are the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court at odds? Guan asked nonchalantly. Zhang Xianwang took a deep breath and said, "It's not that we are at odds with the Holy Court, but rather that the Holy Court has always wanted to eliminate us, to make the great heavenly spirit land entirely theirs. The master of Holy Court, Xingtian, comes from outer heaven and established the Holy Court in this land. The top hierarchy of the Holy Court mostly shares a similar origin with him, while the Immortal Dynasty is a gathering of native immortal beings from the great heavenly spirit land, evolving over generations to form the Immortal Dynasty." This was the first Guan had heard of such matters. If that's the case, wouldn't I who don't belong to the Immortal Dynasty be deemed an enemy? Guan asked. It was important to consider right and wrong based on one's stance. If the stances were different, he didn't understand why the Immortal Dynasty would still seek him out. Zhang Xianwang hurriedly explained, "It's not just the Immortal Dynasty that belongs to native beings of the great heavenly spirit land, all beings below heaven are so, it's just that the current beings only recognize the Holy Court." "So what then? You guys wouldn't want me to go against Holy Court, right?" Guan countered. "Senior, you refuse to accept chi fortune and status, and you conceal your real identity. The only thing you could fear is the Holy Court. If you cooperate with the Immortal Dynasty, we will fulfill any needs you have. However, before that, we hope you can infiltrate Holy Court to rescue someone for us, someone who is not from the Immortal Dynasty but has been beneficial to us." Zhang Xianwang earnestly said. He was about to introduce this person when Guan suddenly interrupted, "No need to continue, I refuse. It does not matter who rules the world, nor do I wish to get involved in your grievances. If that's the matter, then please leave. Head have to be full to do the Immortal Dynasty's bidding." Not to mention whether Zhang Xianwang's words were true, even if they were, he wouldn't agree. Currently, only the great Nether Saint King from Holy Court bore a grudge against him. He had no reason to position himself against Holy Court. Moreover, the Immortal Dynasty clearly felt inferior and thought they couldn't overcome Holy Court. He had no desire to be their pawn. Senior. Zhang Xianwang still wanted to persuade, but a terrifying force enveloped him, making him fall silent and tremble. This carefree primordial immortal appeared quite embarrassed now. "Leave the supreme sect, do not disturb my secluded cultivation. I do not wish to be an enemy of any force, but if someone forces me, I won't hesitate to visit their Taoist tradition." Before his words fully faded, Guan disappeared from the spot, leaving Zhang Xianwang in the room, his face changing expressions. He originally thought Sword Venerable Fudao was concealing his name because he feared Holy Court. He didn't expect that what Sword Venerable Fudao feared was the entire world. Are there really such ascetic cultivators in the world with such a temperament? Meanwhile, Guan returned to the 8 scenic caves. Had he not been favorably impressed by Zhang Xianwang, Guan wouldn't have met him at all. Had Zhang persisted unreasoningly and kept pushing, Guan wouldn't hesitate to annihilate him. He continued his artifact refining, which had been delayed for several months due to the grand ranking competition. Now he needed to pick it back up. His goal was to create his own Immortal Path Supreme Treasure when he reached the 9th level of Immortal. What kind of Immortal Path Supreme Treasure would be worthy of him? He constantly pondered this question. As dawn broke, Guan felt Zhang Xianwang's presence departing, bringing a smile to his face. He hoped Zhang Xianwang could convey the signal that Guan had released to the Immortal Dynasty. He didn't want further conflicts with the Immortal Dynasty. Standing up, he tidied up before leaving the 8 scenic caves. After the grand ranking competition ended, new disciple numbers in the Supreme Sect surged, even attracting high cultivation level cultivators to join. The Supreme Sect once again began expanding the sect. It recruited many servant disciples to labor, offering generous compensation. Guan's Third Medicine Valley remained unaffected because he offered even higher treatment to the servant disciples. 10 years passed, and the number of disciples in Third Medicine Valley broke 2,000. This year the Supreme Sect agreed to expand Third Medicine Valley. Guan stood on a mountaintop watching his busy disciples, his face filled with a smile. The expansion of Medicine Valley helped increase his lifespan income. Naturally, his mood was excellent. A figure approached from behind him. It was Yang Jian. Yang Jian had grown more composed and his brow bore a vigorous look. "Master." Yang Jian approached Guan and respectfully bowed. Guan did not turn around but gazed into the distance, asking, "Have you decided?" Taking a deep breath, Yang Jian replied, "I have decided. I carry too much karma. First it was Impermanence Tian and now Heaven Sect. As my cultivation level continues to rise, the problems will only increase in the future. I don't want to cause trouble for you in Medicine Valley. Also, I wish to venture out alone to cultivate my heart and seek Tao." Guan turned around, looked at him and softly laughed. "You truly have grown up. Go then, it's time for you to be on your own." Hearing Guan consenting, Yang Jian sighed with relief, his face showing happiness as he solemnly nodded. "Leave today and don't say goodbye to anyone else." Guan waved his hand. Stunned, Yang Jian could only nod. As he turned to leave, he couldn't help but ask, "Master, who exactly is my senior brother?" "You've already chosen another path, don't ask further. After leaving Third Medicine Valley, do not mention my name or reveal my existence, or else." Guan's back faced Yang Jian as he spoke in a calm tone. He didn't complete his sentence, but he believed Yang Jian understood. Yang Jian took a deep breath, knelt again and bowed deeply to Guan. Then Yang Jian left. Guan watched the sky, his gaze profound. He was not afraid of Yang Jian exposing him. Currently, as Sword Venerable, he displayed the cultivation level of Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma. Who could guess his cultivation had reached Divine Thought True Immortal? Moreover, Yang Jian himself had a significant background. It was better that he left to follow his own path. The child has grown up and ultimately wants to soar high. Guan sighed, then shook his head with a wry smile, turning to walk down the mountain. When he reached the base, he saw an X-N chasing the white spirit rat. The corners of his mouth curved upwards. At least this disciple was still here. Now that Yang Jian had left, it was time to focus on training an Xan. Although Nzin's talents were ordinary, if he diligently cultivated, he might surpass An Hao and Yang Jian, for Guan himself was growing at a much faster rate. Chapter 327. Nzin's surprise. Late at night, an Xan knocked on Guan's room door, and with a wave of his sleeve the door opened directly. An Xan stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She approached Guan's desk, curiously looking at her master. Guan seldom called for her at this time alone, and she couldn't help but be curious. Guan caught the disrupted cultivation aura from downstairs and spoke. Yang Jian has left to gain experience. How about I teach you cultivation techniques myself from now on? An Xan was taken aback and asked, haven't you always been teaching me? Guan chuckled, previously I only assisted you in energy absorption, but now I will truly help you become stronger. After hearing this, an Xan smiled brightly. If master is willing to teach, naturally I have no objections as long as you don't despise me for my lack of insight. Don't worry. Guan offered reassurance, then began to talk about affairs within Medicine Valley. The cultivation aura downstairs returned to normal and remained undisturbed throughout. After chit-chatting for a while, Guan let an Xan leave. Then he left the third Medicine Valley heading towards Mystic Valley. Arriving in Mystic Valley, he stepped into the Nianchu cave, preparing to spend the night with Tian Yaoer and her 3 demons. In a bright and magnificent hall, rows of figures stood, forming 4 long lines, neat and orderly, with the 2 middle rows spaced wide apart to create a broad aisle. A rainbow light flew into the hall, swiftly condensing into the form of Zhang Xianwang. Zhang Xianwang quickly strode forward, reaching the steps, where he bowed in greeting and looked up to see a towering figure seated on a golden throne, the back of which was made of overlapping golden weapons, like an unfurled fan. The towering figure donned a red dragon robe and a dragon crown with hanging beads, surrounded by whirling blood-colored dragon chi, as if encircled by dragons. His visage was majestic, eyes seemingly containing a sea of stars, piercing and profound. This person was none other than the ruler of the Immortal dynasty, the Yangxian Emperor. After Zhang Xianwang recounted his mission's details, the hall erupted with discussion among the immortal spirits. This sword Venerable Fudao dares to show no respect to us, arrogant. He indeed has that right. After all, he dared to refuse the divine position offered by the Holy Court. It seems he is one of those ascetics who wishes to stay away from conflicts. The world is complex and one can't simply hide whenever they wish. The Holy Court will certainly be suspicious of him. Now that the Holy Minister dominates the court, we need not lift a finger. He alone can provoke Sword Venerable Fudao into action, considering that the great Nether Saint King is his lackey. Once Zhang Xianwang concluded his report, the discussions in the hall turned raucous. Ignoring the surrounding noise, Zhang Xianwang's gaze was fixed on the Yangxian Emperor, awaiting his judgment. The Yangxian Emperor slowly asked, from what you've seen, is what he spoke the truth? Silence fell over the hall upon his words. Hesitating for a moment, Zhang Xianwang replied, based on what I know of the Supreme Sect, his actions are indeed consistent with his character. He only strikes to defend against external threats to the Supreme Sect, never due to personal vendettas. At least no one knows of any, and even the Hall of Elders seems unaware of Sword Venerable Fudao's true identity. The Yangxian Emperor listened and narrowed his eyes. No one dared interrupt his contemplation. After a while, the Yangxian Emperor spoke, in that case, let's not disturb him any further. Yes. Zhang Xianwang replied, relieved. Although the actual realm of Sword Venerable Fudao was unclear, the mere fact that he could effortlessly crush the great cold demon sect meant he was at least at the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm. If his realm exceeded that, he would be even more dangerous to provoke. Unable to ally, it was also needless to make an enemy. Zhang Xianwang then added, during this mission, I also encountered someone from Heaven's Sect, who went to the Supreme Sect looking for someone. It's likely that the reincarnation of the great Nether Saint King is hidden within the Supreme Sect. Heaven's Sect? Seems like the Holy Court is in for more trouble, commented the Yangxian Emperor, his tone playful. Zhang Xianwang shared this sentiment. He asked, if trouble does break out, do we need to intervene? The Yangxian Emperor snorted, intervene in what? With the arrogant nature of Heaven's Sect and the great Nether Saint King, they didn't need our help in the past. Naturally, we should not offer it now. They underestimated Shengxin's benevolence. Without Xingtian, the Holy Court would only become the greatest terror in the world. Zhang Xianwang fell silent, reflecting on the majesty of Heaven's sect inside. The other immortal spirits in the hall began reminiscing about the past, and regarding the fortunes of Heaven's sect and the great Nether Saint King, they were mostly schadenfreude. The autumn wind blew through the woods as the blood prison great saint lay on the ground, pondering deeply as he watched an XN practice. Guan sat nearby reading a book, occasionally shifting his position. The blood prison great saint turned to Guan and asked, "Master, she has been meditating for 5 ancient hours. Does she have a talent that I am unable to see through?" Back then he could not see through Yang Jian, and now, faced with Nzin's transformation, he began to doubt himself. As Guan turned the page he responded, "There aren't so many extraordinary geniuses in the world. I merely wanted her to achieve path enlightenment." The blood prison great saint's eyes widened, shocked. He had not given it much thought when Guan asked Zuijian to seek path enlightenment, as Zuijian already had remarkable achievement in the sword Dao. But Xian was different. She was just an inexperienced girl, lacking the demeanor and potential of a powerful being. Could someone so ordinary really be transformed? The blood prison great saint suddenly felt that Yang Jian's current fate was perhaps truly shaped by his master's defiance of the heavens. His heart ignited with excitement. How could one not achieve greatness following such an entity? If Yang Jian comes back and sees an Xian surpassing him, that would be interesting. The blood prison great saint entertained this thought, suddenly feeling that Guan might actually have nurtured an Xian intensively for this very reason. Poor Yang Jian. Nevertheless, it proved that the blood prison great saint's choice was correct, and his mood became even more joyful. Unbeknownst to Guan, the blood prison great saint had conjured up so much in his mind. While he appeared to be reading, he was actually watching over Yang Jian as he ventured to the sea. He saw Heaven sect tracking Yang Jian, and apart from them, no one else was watching him, which meant that the great Nether Saint King had not yet realized Yang Jian's identity. This indicated that no trouble would come his way for the time being. After a while, Guan's divine sense traveled to outer heaven, where a carefree primordial immortal was engaged in combat, quite a rare sight. The adversaries were clearly mortal enemies, striking fiercely, shaking the void. Guan sensed many great cultivators secretly watching the battle, with various divine senses weaving through each other, making him muse that great heaven and earth was indeed full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. As evening approached, Guan finally withdrew the divine sense that had been focused on an Xin, bringing her back to awareness. An Xin slowly opened her eyes to find 2 new cultivation techniques in her mind. Heaven and earth primordial skill and all things form and energy art. Though these techniques were already enhanced by Guan, they were enough for an Xian to ponder for a lifetime. Heaven and earth primordial skill was the foundation of her cultivation, while all things form and energy art could conceal her cultivation level, both complementing the primordial reincarnation skill. Once she regained her composure, a look of shock flashed across her face. So profound. Instinctively an Xian looked towards Guan, her eyes filled with surprise, confusion, unease and joy. She cautiously asked, "Master, was it because of you last time too?" Guan, with a book in hand, nodded lightly. "How does it feel?" "Good, but..." An Xian stopped mid-sentence, hesitant to ask a lingering question, afraid of offending Guan. How could Master be so powerful? Could Master be an immortal? Guan calmly said, "From now on, I will teach you cultivation in private, and you mustn't tell anyone." For some reason, upon hearing these words, Nzin's heart quivered. Sounded so familiar. A figure from deep within her memory emerged, coincidentally overlapping with Guan at this moment. Could it be? Impossible. Wasn't Master just a little over 300 years old? How could he be so formidable? Guan put away his book, looking at an Xin. The identity of Supreme Sex Guan is indeed my disguise. You guessed it right, I am him. From the very beginning you've only had me as your master. With these words, an Xin immediately stood up, her eyes welling up and her body trembling uncontrollably. "Master." Overwhelmed by emotions, an Xin burst into Guan's arms and began to sob uncontrollably. Guan, helpless, said, "Why are you crying? You're making it seem like we haven't seen each other in ages, and I haven't mistreated you these years, have I?" An Xin buried her head in his chest, sobbing, "I haven't been mistreated. It's just, I never expected that, after all these years, what I've wanted most is actually happening. I'm so foolish. How could there be 2 people in this world who are so good to me? Master, I've missed you so much." The blood prison great saint was utterly confused. Weren't these 2 just master and disciple? Why the emotional reunion? Guan patted Nzin's back. Let go of your master, you're grown up now. Don't let others see this. Nxan released Guan and then knelt on the ground to wipe her tears, her face radiating with a smile. So, master, you tricked us. If my senior brother knew you were our master, he would probably be devastated. Wait, does that mean you knew him because you were looking out for him back then? Nxan asked wide-eyed, her shift from formality to familiarity not out of disrespect, but because the master who saved her and led her on the immortal cultivation path was like a father to her. In front of her father, she had no apprehensions. Guan said, you could say that. However, our relationship should stay as it appears on the surface, and don't tell your senior brother. Nxan immediately nodded, her eyes still red, but now she was excited. Suddenly she glanced at the blood prison great saint, hesitated and said, Master, but he hurt us. The blood prison great saint bristled. What do you mean behind my back? I am the master's most trusted mount, even closer than you disciples. Guan smiled, don't underestimate him. Bull Demon King, feel free to share your story with her. With that, the blood prison great saint stood tall, filled with pride, and began to reveal his true identity. Ascender. Mahayana realm. Just those two aspects were enough to shock Nxan. Her mouth agape, and as for the long list of titles that followed, she had already tuned out. She turned back to Guan and asked, Master, does that mean Yang Jian is really my junior brother? What is his cultivation level now? Ji Xiaoyu raised an eyebrow. After a moment of silence she asked, You wouldn't happen to know Sword Venerable Fudao, would you? Guan's face changed dramatically and he exclaimed with shock, How did you know? Really? Truth be told, I am actually a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao. Heh. What, you don't believe me? Okay then, I am Sword Venerable Fudao. Ji Xiaoyu rolled her eyes at Guan and said, You're always talking nonsense. Every time I ask about your secrets you always dodge the question, yet I've shared everything with you. At this point, her tone carried a hint of melancholy. Guan replied helplessly, My dear sister, I do want to know. Every time you just tell me outright, I listen with trepidation, fearing that your enemy from a former life will come knocking at our door. It's not death I fear, but if the enemy tortures me severely, even if I confess, they might not believe me. As he spoke, Guan rambled on, causing Ji Xiaoyu to show a look of remorse. From Guan's perspective, it indeed seemed like a lot of pressure. After Guan finished speaking, Ji Xiaoyu asked, Should I stop telling you from now on? Really? False. I'm still going to tell you. You only live once. I speak to you not because I want to talk about these things. Having said that, Ji Xiaoyu turned and left, leaving behind her solitary silhouette. Guan laughed to himself. This girl's nature was indeed amusing. Then he picked up the Green Hero travelogue from the table and continued reading. Xian Tianyi hadn't published a new book recently, which had allowed some laziness to set in, causing Guan some dissatisfaction. Find a moment to tap him on the shoulder? Forget it, that's beneath my dignity. Having Shenzhen come back to the Jianghu wouldn't be bad either, she has the talent to surpass Xian Tianyi. High up under the blue sky, above the white clouds, Guan rode the blood prison great saint with an Nxan standing beside him. An Nxan, dressed all in white and wearing a white jade mask, was at that moment caressing her mask. Master, where are we going? An Nxan turned her head and asked, feeling a powerful force whisking her away, immense and vast. To another branch of your master's sect, Guan replied. Upon hearing this, an Nxan immediately became excited and asked, Master, what realm are you really in? Even Senior Nine Fingers and the others can't see through your disguise. I am slightly higher in cultivation level than the Nine-Finger Divine Lord, Wu Xing and Xin Xinzi, Guan answered ambiguously. Seeing that he was unwilling to reveal more, an Nxan didn't press the matter and started to get curious about their destination. A gust of sea breeze blew from the front, prompting an Nxan to turn her head. Immediately her complexion changed drastically. One by one, towering and majestic peaks entered her vision, shocking her very eyes. Guan glanced at her, feeling a sense of emotion. Since they had recognized each other, an Nxan seemed to have become a different person, lively as if returning to her youthful days. This indicated that she truly saw Guan as family. With parents present, a child can afford to be willful. Without parents to accompany, one must learn to behave properly. An Nxan was like this, which made Guan quite happy. After all, he had watched an Nxan grow up, and she had been with him for so many years. In his heart, wasn't an Nxan like a daughter? Look at you, acting like you've never seen anything. This is Mortal World Peak, and the master here is the Peak Master of Dingtian Peak. Blood Prison Great Saint said proudly, as if he himself were the Peak Master of Dingtian Peak. An Xan exclaimed in astonishment, Dingtian Peak? I've heard of it. Senior Lu came to attend the Millennial Peak Conference before. So that's how it is, no wonder. Master, if Senior Lu knew it was you taking care of her in secret, with her affection for you, she would probably wish to pledge herself to you right there and then. Guan's handsome face turned red and he fake coughed saying, What nonsense are you spouting? How could a girl speak such words? Your master would never become Taoist friends with her. Just so she isn't worthy? Blood Prison Great Saint chimed in, feeling annoyed with Lu Lingjun, also an ascender, ever since she had called him a stupid cow. An Xan giggled behind her hand and said, I finally understand why the master refuses to accept those female companions. Indeed, there's no need. They would only drag you down. She admired Guan greatly. The master truly gave without expecting anything in return. What woman could resist his charisma? And who would have thought that Sword Venerable Fudao would be a valley master at the Supreme Sect? Such a waste of talent. The master really has patience. An Xen silently vowed to herself to become a great cultivator like her master, hidden amidst the mortal coil, watching over the swirling winds of the world with a smile. If she could truly surpass her senior brother and junior brothers, she would also conceal her cultivation level, watching the two of them vie against each other with a smile. Just by thinking about it, an Xen felt a surge of excitement. At that moment, a vast aura descended, dispersing the sea of clouds and fluttering in Zin's long hair and gown. She looked up and her eyes instinctively widened. There before her was a green mountain reflection stretching across the sky, larger than all the massive peaks in front of them. Guan remained expressionless. His reason for coming today was for this very item. It was an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure belonging to Mortal World Peak. Chapter 329, Fu Xinxiu Qingtian Peak. When the azure mountain shadows hung suspended in the sky, disciples from various peaks flew out, looking up at this magnificent scene. Guan did not stop, taking Blood Prison Great Saint and an Xan toward Dingtian Peak. An Xan, feeling the aura of the mountains and cultivators along the way, was secretly astonished, realizing that Mortal World Peak truly was unfathomable, seeing that Senior Lu hadn't spoken falsely. The oppressive force of the azure mountain shadows lingered for a long time, enveloping the entire domain of Mortal World Peak, prompting discussions among the disciples from all peaks. Upon reaching Dingtian Peak, Guan flew toward the mountaintop. Only then did an Xan truly feel the immense size and height of these mountains. Thinking that such a vast mountain belonged to her master, and Zin's gaze toward Guan was filled with admiration. Soon they arrived at the top of the mountain, and as soon as they landed, Zhu Xinglan, the leading disciple of Dingtian Peak, appeared and came forward to greet Guan with a salute. What's the situation? Guan asked. Zhu Xinglan replied, Its main peak's Fu Xinxiu subduing an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. He is the future master of the main peak and the disciple with the strongest talent in 1,000,000 years in Mortal World Peak. There was a complex tone in his voice when he mentioned Fu Xinxiu. Guan looked up at the azure mountain shadow in the sky and laughed. That's quite a commotion. For such a carefree primordial immortal to subdue an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure, it seemed to be quite strenuous. It seemed that this Immortal Path Supreme Treasure was somewhat special. Zhu Xinglan answered, This Immortal Path Supreme Treasure was found beyond outer heaven by the Peak Master, without the suppression of Qi Fortune from the Holy Court. Truly subduing its immortal spirit would raise quite a ruckus, and there have been those who failed before. Guan nodded and then asked about Dingtian Peak's recent situation, learning that there was nothing requiring his intervention. Only then did Guan start walking toward the medicine garden. An Xan and Blood Prison Great Saint followed behind him, with Zhu Xinglan accompanying them, yet his gaze occasionally shifted toward the sky, admiring the vast azure mountain shadow. Who wouldn't want to possess an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure? It's just that their numbers were limited, and it wasn't something one could have just by wishing for it. While picking medicinal herbs, Guan introduced them to an Xan. The majority of the medicinal herbs here were unheard of by an Xan, so she listened intently and wasn't distracted by the phenomenon in the sky. Zhu Xinglan was inwardly curious about the origins of this girl, feeling that their master treated her differently compared to others. And Zin's mask, crafted by Guan, was inscrutable for Zhu Xinglan, who was at the 9th layer of Wandering Immortal Realm, and he didn't dare probe with his divine sense. An hour later, the vast oppressive force enveloping Mortal World Peak began to dissolve, and the azure mountain shadow in the sky remained, even becoming more detailed, revealing trees that swayed with the wind as if they were truly real. You can go on with your duties, there's no need to follow us. Guan, just stepping out from a section of the medicine garden, turned his head and spoke to Zhu Xinglan, who immediately saluted and then disappeared into thin air. Attracted by the sudden disappearance, an Xen looked at Guan and asked, "Master, what's his cultivation level?" Guan casually replied, "Wandering Immortal Realm 9 layers." And Zin's pupils, hidden beneath the mask, involuntarily widened. She had heard of Wandering Immortals. The 9-fingered Divine Lord who took first place in the Heavenly Ranking Tournament was a Wandering Immortal. To reach the 9th layer of Wandering Immortal Realm, didn't that mean the person just now might be even stronger than the 9-fingered Divine Lord? Feeling the pressure, an Xen thought of the multitude of disciples at Dingtian Peak, each seemingly an immortal, commanding such formidable power. How could she not feel the pressure, when her master was training her with such focus? At the very least, she couldn't disappoint her master. Master and disciple walked and chatted along the mountain path, with Blood Prison Great Saint trailing behind. As the sea breeze blew and they looked out over the entire world, they seemed so insignificant. The azure mountain shadow in the sky began to scatter, and not long after, the sky returned to its original state, resplendently blue. Master, if you compared that Immortal Path Supreme Treasure to Martial Uncle Li Ya's Divine Exotic City, which would be stronger? An Xen couldn't help but ask. The strength of Divine Exotic City left a deep impression on her when Li Ya participated in the Heavenly Ranking Tournament. The strength of an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure is related to the user's cultivation level. Li Ya is not yet able to fully unleash Divine Exotic City's power, Guan answered. The mightiest feature of an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure is its eternal indestructibility. Currently there are many Immortal Path Supreme Treasures in the world, all passed down from generation to generation, each symbolizing the lifetime of a 9 heavens of Immortal Path being. After hearing this, an Xen became even more curious about Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. Guan brought her here today to broaden her horizons, to understand the world structure, and to comprehend what an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure is. What's that? Blood Prison Great Saint suddenly spoke up, and an Xen turned her head to look, seeing a streak of azure light racing from the distant horizon of the sea, stirring up huge waves. Could the little azure mountain in their master's hand be the Immortal Path Supreme Treasure? He could seize an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure with a mere wave of his hand? And Zin's heart filled with admiration. If I let go, are you sure you can catch it? Guan asked with a chuckle. Fu Xinxiu hurriedly replied, I will do my utmost. Immediately, Guan threw the tiny azure mountain into the distance, casually launching it 1,000,000 miles away. Fu Xinxiu appeared out of thin air beside the little mountain, his mana swirling around his hand as he reached out to grasp it. Boom! A terrifying momentum suddenly exploded, tossing Fu Xinxiu away, and his face grew extremely unsightly. The little mountain turned into an azure beam, once again streaking toward Dingtian Peak. As Fu Xinxiu turned around, he saw that the light had vanished. He flew swiftly toward Dingtian Peak, landing again on the edge of the cliff with a complex expression as he looked at Guan. The little mountain once again floated above Guan's palm. That moment, several figures appeared out of nowhere in the air behind Fu Xinxiu, all of whom were the authorities of Mortal World Peak. Even the master of the main peak, Taoist Lord Yongyan, had come. Baizia's gaze fell on the little mountain in Guan's hand and then shifted to Fu Xinxiu, revealing a mocking expression. Guan turned to Taoist Lord Yongyan and laughed. Peak Master, this treasure kept smashing into my Dingtian Peak. I had no choice but to claim it. Taoist Lord Yongyan seemed to realize something, a hint of understanding crossing his eyes, and then he laughed. This is Qingtian Peak, sought by one of my juniors in outer heaven. If Taoist friend likes it, I am willing to bestow it upon Taoist friend. Upon hearing this, Fu Xinxiu immediately became anxious and looked at Taoist Lord Yongyan, saying, Master. Well then, I will find you another Immortal Path Supreme Treasure in the future. You have no fate with this one. It's not reasonable to blame others, Taoist Lord Yongyan said with finality. Although he was only one minor realm higher than Fu Xinxiu was raised by him, so facing his decision, Fu Xinxiu had no choice but to give up. He took a deep breath, gave Guan a salute and then turned and left. The other peak masters looked at each other in dismay, each harboring their own thoughts. Taoist Lord Yongyan, looking back at Guan, said, The treasure indeed has a destiny with Dingtian Peak. I hope Daoist friend can protect Dingtian Peak well. Guan nodded and said, if Mortal World Peak needs me, I will also take action. Daoist Lord Yangmian's face revealed a smile, and then he took his leave. The other peak masters successively saluted and dispersed. Guan felt a hint of regret. Baizia didn't seek him out for a chat, their relationship seemed to have grown distant. After everyone left, an Xang couldn't help but ask, just like that you obtained an Immortal Path Supreme treasure? It was her first time seeing her master so assertive. And of course, Sword Venerable Fudao had always been domineering in his actions. Guan was just gentle toward cultivators of lower realms. Blood Prison Great Saint stared intently at Qingtian Peak in Guan's hand, suddenly feeling that he too might one day possess such a treasure. As long as he performed well. Guan proceeded to walk toward the top of the mountain, while he used his divine thought to probe Qingtian Peak in his hand. Qingtian Peak had already fostered an immortal spirit, apparently alive for many years, far more powerful than divine exotic immortal spirit. After all, it was able to break free from the suppression of a carefree primordial immortal. Soon, his divine thought captured a heavenly demon, hidden within the walls of a dilapidated temple within Qingtian Peak, extremely concealed and probably difficult to detect even for the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. Practice diligently. Once you are strong enough, I will give this treasure for you to use, Guan said to an Xen beside him, who was full of curiosity, smiling gently. Chapter 330, Awakening Really? When an Xan heard Guan's words, she was instantly excited, and the eyes of the Blood Prison Great Saint also turned fiery. Indeed, the master would not be stingy with the treasures of the Immortal Path. After returning to the mountaintop, Guan had an Xan start cultivating while he went back to the house alone. Sitting on his bed, Guan's gaze fell on Qingtian Peak. He first used his divine thought to erase any marks and restrictions within Qingtian Peak that made him wary. The immortal spirit of Qingtian Peak was very submissive and did not resist Guan. Instead, it was quite jubilant. After taking safety precautions, Guan began to make Qingtian Peak recognize him as its master. With the compliance of the Qingtian immortal spirit, it took Guan less than an hour to refine the restrictions of Qingtian Peak and take control of the soul of the Qingtian immortal spirit, making it completely serve him. With the Qingtian immortal spirit in hand, this would be the combat power of a carefree primordial immortal. Moreover, Guan felt that the power contained in Qingtian Peak was greater than the Seven Stars Mirror, the Immortal King Crown and the Divine Exotic City. The Immortal King Crown and Divine Exotic City had been damaged and needed a long time to recover. The Seven Stars Mirror hadn't suffered much damage but was slightly weaker than Qingtian Peak, however, the difference was limited. After all this, the corners of Guan's mouth curved upward. Next, it was like capturing a turtle in a jar. Forget it, let me leave him hanging for a while. After all, he can't escape or pass any messages outside. He pretended not to know that a heavenly demon was hidden inside Qingtian Peak, and the Qingtian immortal spirit was completely unaware. During the process of making Qingtian Peak his own, Guan peeked into the memory of the Qingtian immortal spirit. It spent most of its time either asleep or sealed by a strong force, unaware of the filth inside it. Although unaware of the filth inside, the Qingtian immortal spirit was influenced by it. It inexplicably felt something attracting it at Dingtian Peak, thus it crashed towards Dingtian Peak. If Guan had not intervened, it planned to directly smash Dingtian Peak to force the alluring thing to reveal itself. From this perspective, the identity of the demon fetus below is not simple. Guan thought silently. He pondered whether or not to move the demon fetus elsewhere, but where could he move it to? Moving it, if awakened prematurely, wouldn't that accelerate the catastrophe? No matter, let it stay here. As for whether another heavenly demon will come later, he didn't care. He would destroy any heavenly demon with lesser cultivation than his. As for those with higher cultivation than his, if they could infiltrate the great heavenly spirit land, wouldn't the holy court have been penetrated long ago? Guan shrank Qingtian Peak into an accessory and hung it on his belt. His ultimate elusive body was evolved from the practice of the demon shadow divine skill. Its main use now was to block all causality deduction, which also protected Qingtian Peak when it was attached to his body, making it indeducible. It wasn't necessary to activate the ultimate elusive body to block causality deduction. After mastering it, he could block it permanently. In such a case, releasing some causality on the surface could easily misguide others' deductions. The ultimate elusive body also had combat capabilities, allowing his physical soul to become elusive, dodging spells and divine skills, providing infinite uses in battle. Guwen stood up, stretched lazily and loosened his body. Heavenly demons, the holy court. It's really hard to achieve true peace in this world. Guwen reflected internally, yet he faced no pressure. There's still much time ahead, take it slow. The conflicts of the moment mean little, who laughs last is what truly matters. As the seasons changed, a new year arrived. Just after the new year, Guwen was in the forest instructing an Xian on chi absorption cultivation. The stepping path of age's step was too profound and enigmatic. Even with Guwen's personal guidance, an Xian still found it difficult to master. The current goal for an Xian was to discover the patterns of the stepping path of age's step. An Xian moved swiftly, appearing 5 steps away in an instant before stumbling and falling to the ground. She sat on the ground, feeling dizzy and shaky, her eyes closed and mouth slightly open, which made Guwen want to laugh. He didn't help an Xian regain her composure. This was a necessary path for her. She stayed in that spot for nearly half an hour before fully regaining her senses. Turning to Guwen, she gave a bitter smile and said, "Master, this technique is incredibly profound. Do I really need to learn it?" Guwen, holding the 7 stars mirror like a fan, chuckled and said, "You must learn it. Just absorbing chi is not enough, and besides, cultivating divine skills will enhance your understanding too." An Xian made a mournful face but didn't give up. Instead, she stood up again, ready to continue practicing the stepping path of age's step. The thought of the previous dizzy sensation made an Xian want to vomit. She raised her hands, patted her face, and tried not to think about the discomfort. At that moment, she turned her head and saw a golden glow in the sky outside the forest, rapidly stretching out and magnificent like the sunset. Guwen also looked up, his expression calm. Is it finally coming? Meanwhile, overseas on an island, Yang Jian and Heaven Sect stood side by side. Yang Jian gazed at his right hand, having just crushed a golden jade stone given by Heaven Sect, with his palm covered by a golden sphere and tiny golden stars scattering into the air. He appeared expressionless, yet he was extremely nervous inside. Merging with his past memories, was he still himself? Heaven Sect looked at him and comfortingly said, "Don't worry, this process won't be painful. I've already set up formations and no one will disturb you." Yang Jian looked up at the sky where the golden glow covered the sky, so beautiful. But this phenomenon? Yang Jian hesitated. Heaven Sect stroked his beard and said, "Don't worry, this phenomenon covers a vast area, and you don't have to worry." Yang Jian took a deep breath and refocused on his palm. Then, the golden stars rising from his palm began to fly toward his face, eventually entering his eyes. The wind picked up on the island as the world's spiritual energy surged towards Yang Jian. The golden light in his palm brightened, illuminating his face while his eyes flickered with different scenes. Seeing this, Heaven Sect smiled, slowly backing away to give Yang Jian space. Elsewhere, inside Supreme Sect, Guwen could see the heaven and earth rules enveloping Yang Jian, with yin-yang rules being the most intense. He couldn't understand the process, but he felt that Yang Jian wouldn't encounter any mishap. There was no other soul in that golden jade stone, so there was no risk of soul snatching. "Master, why has the sky changed color?" an Xian curiously asked. "Your fellow disciple is awakening his past memories," Guwen said nonchalantly as he gazed at the sky. "Past memories?" An Xian immediately became interested, and Guwen did not hide the truth, revealing Yang Jian's causality. Hearing that Yang Jian was the reincarnation of a holy king from the holy court, an Xian was even more shocked. "No wonder he's so powerful, Master. Could my fellow senior brother also be the reincarnation of a great power?" an Xian asked, staring intently at Guwen, her eyes apprehensive. "Probably not." Guwen's answer left an Xian feeling disappointed. If and how was a reincarnation of a great figure, that would mean she was not too bad. The problem was her comparison to an how. However, everyone might have a past life. "Once you reach a certain realm, you will understand," Guwen said and then looked away. He stood up and said, "Let's stop here for today." Upon hearing this, Nzin's face revealed a relieved smile. She followed Guwen's steps. "Master, if Yang Jian awakens his past memories, does that mean he will become the Holy King again? Is the Holy King powerful? What he becomes is up to him to decide. As for the power of a Holy King, let me tell you something. The Great Cold Demon Sect previously served a Holy King. A Holy King could command a sect like the Great Cold Demon Sect? Don't be overly dramatic. Thinking about it now, having such a powerful holy king as my junior brother feels like a dream. Guwen said sternly, stopping Xinzhen from acting rashly. Chapter 331. The Great Emperor from the Silent Destruction Domain. Guwen's gaze remained fixed on the burning scroll on the table while his divine sense locked onto outer heaven. Above the great heavenly spirit land hung 7 suns. From within one of those suns, the eyes of a mysterious colossal creature opened and stared directly at Guwen's attic. It was this creature that caused the scroll to burn. Guwen was not perturbed. The beings in those 7 days all possessed the cultivation level of the carefree primordial immortal, posing no threat to him, but he could feel that they bore great karmic debts and were backed by a mighty presence. Thinking about it, it was normal. After all, if the Holy Court could contain them, either their patron was the Holy Court or their patron was feared by the Holy Court. Regardless of the situation, Guwen did not want to stir trouble unnecessarily. Soon, the scroll on the table turned to ash, yet it miraculously did not affect the table's surface. Xinzhen asked, somewhat shaken, "What was that just now?" Even with her divinity transformation realm cultivation level, she could not understand how the flames appeared and vanished. At this moment, she felt as if she had incurred the wrath of the heavens. Guwen took a deep breath and said, "I'm not sure, it seems like you shouldn't have painted yesterday's vision." Xinzhen frowned and asked, "Only yesterday?" "It seems so, since you've painted other pictures before without such events occurring," Guwen replied. Thinking about it, the karmic debt hidden by Yang Jian seemed to be related to those 7 days. Xinzhen took a deep breath and said, "Forget it, my cultivation is too weak and I certainly cannot provoke them." With her words, Guwen saw the mysterious creature within the sun close its eyes. Xinzhen had managed to escape this ordeal. It was merely a warning, indicating that the mysterious beings of the 7 days were not so murderous or domineering. Guwen sat back down and teased, "You're quite something, managing to draw a picture that provokes the wrath of the heavens." Xinzhen did not take pride in that but earnestly said, "Indeed, I felt I was capturing an obscure and mysterious state while painting, and each time after I finished painting, it became easier for me to cultivate. Many confusions in cultivation would also become clearer." "It seems you're also about to undergo a profound transformation," Guwen said enviously. Only then did Xinzhen smile, snorting, "Be nicer to me from now on, perhaps I'll become an immortal someday." "All right, Immortal Shen. Good boy. How shameless. Daring to offend a future immortal?" The two began to bicker, and the fear in Xinzhen's heart was swept away. She felt that she needed to be more cautious about her future paintings. She had to discern clearly what should be painted and what should not. An hour later, Xinzhen left. Guwen then lay back in his chair and watched Yang Jian and Heaven Sect. After awakening his past life memories, Yang Jian's cultivation had not experienced substantial transformation, but his whole demeanor indeed had changed. Guwen watched for a while and, confirming that Yang Jian was unharmed, withdrew his gaze. In the days that followed, Yang Jian and Heaven Sect stayed on that island, protected by Heaven Sect's formation. Many great cultivators passed by, unable to detect their existence. Until the summer came. Guwen rode the Blood Prison Great Saint down from the transmission array platform, feeling cheerful. Just as he was about to leave, Nine-Finger Divine Lord approached him curiously and asked, "Guwen, your disciple in XN has changed significantly lately. What did you teach her?" Because Guwen had previously mentored Yang Jian, he believed in Xin's changes were related to Guwen, which made him more curious about the being behind Guwen. The most mysterious and powerful entity in the Supreme Sect was Sword Venerable Fudao. Nine-Finger Divine Lord had always felt that Guwen was connected to Sword Venerable Fudao. Perhaps Guwen's achievement in Go was related to Sword Venerable Fudao. As for the possibility that Guwen was Sword Venerable Fudao, after learning Guwen's age, he ceased to think in that direction. Unique Taoist sorcery, indescribable and unutterable, unless you become my disciple. Guwen looked down at Nine-Finger Divine Lord and said with a proud smile, causing Nine-Finger Divine Lord to roll his eyes, "You know my cultivation level is quite high, and yet you dare take me as a disciple?" Nine-Finger Divine Lord said with irritation. Guwen shrugged and replied, "The accomplished can be teachers. You surely have aspects where you lag behind me. Could it be that in your life you only pursue cultivation levels? Could it be that in this world only energy absorption can lead to the Tao?" Upon hearing this, Nine-Finger Divine Lord did not counter but fell into thought. Guwen patted the head of the Blood Prison Great Saint, urging him to move forward. The Blood Prison Great Saint had been cultivating the primordial reincarnation skill for years. Though his cultivation level was still sealed, he was hopeful about the future. 1,000 years from now he would surely become an immortal. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord turned his head and asked, "Can one also achieve the Tao through playing Go?" "Who can say for sure? No matter what you do, as long as you put your heart into it, everything is possible," Guwen replied casually. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord had clearly been seriously injured. His cultivation level was certainly not just that of a wandering immortal, but Guwen was not interested in his past. Watching Guwen's retreating figure, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord sensed a transcendental aura from this young man. He seemed to have seen through the mundane secular world, appearing more like an immortal than actual immortals. Thus, it seemed that Sword Venerable Fudao remained in the supreme sect perhaps for this young man? This speculation made Nine-Fingered Divine Lord increasingly convinced. It appeared staying in the supreme sect was the right choice. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord looked toward Divine Heart Sun, who was reading under a tree. Previously he thought Divine Heart Sun was possessed, but now upon seeing him again, he suddenly felt that Divine Heart Sun might also achieve the Tao. Then looking at the third Medicine Valley he had a strong feeling. In the years to come, this Medicine Valley would spawn many beings who would stir the winds and clouds of the world. This intrigued him and anticipation bubbled up in his heart. He would wait and see what kind of person Sword Venerable Fudao's chosen land could nurture. Elsewhere Guwen went upstairs. He closed the door of his room, sat down in the chair, and took the miniature Qingtian peak that had become a piece of ornament at his waist, placing it on the table. Today he felt a slight anomaly within Qingtian peak, related to that mysterious heavenly demon. That fellow couldn't restrain himself anymore. Guwen's divine sense probed into Qingtian peak, which also concealed a realm within it. Although not as extensive as the realms within Divine Exotic City, this realm was broader than the Taizong continent. At that moment, inside a dilapidated temple, Guwen's divine sense avatar walked in. Sunlight pierced through the worn temple walls, elongating Guwen's shadow. Guwen approached a wall crowded with ancient paintings, pitted and aged, their history unknown. "Come out, let's talk, give me a reason and I want to erase you," Guwen stated emotionlessly, his gaze fixed on the wall. As the words fell, wisps of demonic chi seeped from the surface of the dilapidated wall. Even in broad daylight, they appeared haunting and horrifying. Shortly after, a gaunt, black-clad old man crawled out from the demonic chi as if transcending time. His eyes brimming with bloodshot veins, he locked his gaze on Guwen the moment he emerged. Upon standing up, he asked in a deep voice, "Who exactly are you and what do you want?" Guwen answered, "You impact Qingtian Peak toward my mountain, you ask me what I want?" Upon hearing this, the old man's expression grew even grimmer, and he fell silent, his eyes flickering. "Are you here because of the demon fetus?" Guwen asked. Upon hearing this, the old man's face changed drastically, and his body began to tremble. He stared intently at Guwen and asked, "What have you done to him?" "I haven't touched him yet, but the trouble he has caused me seems to be growing." Guwen's tone remained indifferent, making it hard for the old man to gauge his thoughts. The old man hesitated before speaking. "You and us bear no enmity?" Guwen remained silent. Emboldened, the old man continued, "If you do not wish to be entangled in this great karma, it would be wise to leave this place. The demon fetus is a reincarnation of the great emperor from the silent destruction domain, gestated for tens of thousands of years and immovable, with more heavenly demons yet to descend." Guwen pondered internally but asked aloud, "So, you have already established contacts with some of the upper echelons of the Holy Court?" The old man answered, "If you truly don't wish to involve yourself in this karma, it's best not to inquire further. Inquiring more will inevitably alert certain beings." When Guwen put forward this question, it indicated to the old man that Guwen was not connected to the Holy Court, so he did not wish to make an enemy of Guwen. Given Guwen's methods in suppressing Qingtian Peak, he knew he was no match. "What is the purpose of your infiltration into the great heavenly spirit land? It wouldn't be to target the beings of this realm, would it? So, where could I possibly flee to?" Guwen asked slowly. He was also making a decision. Whether to leave Mortal World Peak. Logically, if he wanted to avoid trouble, he should leave. The universe is vast, there are always places to hide. Besides, our plans cannot commence in the short term, the old man replied, sensing Guwen's intention to withdraw. He felt more confident. What was the cultivation level of the demon fetus in his previous life? Guan inquired. The great emperor in his previous life was an entity of the immortal 8th layer heaven. It won't be difficult for him to reach the immortal 7th layer heaven in this life, the old man replied. Even though the old man was a carefree primordial immortal, to him, reaching the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm was challenging, not to mention higher realms. The immortal 7th layer heaven was already in existence that could traverse the universe in his mind, unless those eternal beings took action. Immortal 8th layer heaven. Guan's expression turned ugly, but he was slightly relieved internally. The 7th layer was the Tao void mysterious immortal, and the 8th layer was the divine thought true immortal realm where he belonged. He was at the 9th level of divine thought true immortal realm. The old man, thinking Guan had been frightened, continued, as long as you leave this place, even if I find the demon fetus, it will take thousands of years to fully form him. You have plenty of time to find a new place for cultivation. Thousands of years? The pressure in Guan's heart sharply decreased. If it took the old man thousands of years with his help, wouldn't it take tens of thousands of years without him? Guan spoke, allow me a few more years to think. I should have that much time, right? The old man did not develop hostility toward him, so he wanted to give the old man a chance. Chapter 332 Earth Element Spirit Guan set down the Qingtian peak and, after his conversation with the man in black came to an end, his heart grew calm. In situations where the threat was not that great, he naturally wouldn't run away. He would only preserve himself when utterly powerless. Moreover, there was a time difference between higher and lower realms. 10 or 100 years might be lengthy for beings of lower realms, but for immortal path life, it was but a fleeting moment. Anyway, the man in black couldn't run away. Guan decided to keep him for the time being to see what sort of realization he would come to. Guan raised his hand and beckoned, attracting a piece of paper from across the space. He was ready to write another secret book. The sun set and the moon rose. Time turned its pages day by day. Winter snow inevitably arrived. Before the world fell into a blanket of white, Guan went to the wooden fence to enjoy the snowscape. He hadn't stood there long before Ji Xiaoyu walked over, standing side by side with him. Ji Xiaoyu didn't look up at the sky but fixed her gaze on a distant NXN. NXN was carrying a plump white spirit rat, constantly moving her little mouth, clearly saying something to the white spirit rat. She's progressing so fast, Ji Xiaoyu whispered. Could she not? Whenever Guan had time, he would assist an XIN in entering the way. Although her lifespan didn't increase rapidly, it made her cultivation twice as effective with half the effort. He genuinely intended to cultivate an XIN to surpass an Hao and Yang Jian. It's all right. Her cultivation level is growing very slowly, Guan spoke. Due to the primordial reincarnation skill, and Xin's cultivation level was always suppressed. Even if she were to release her cultivation level in the future, it would be concealed, with her apparent cultivation level controlled at the Foundation establishment realm. It seemed that Guan would have to tell an XN to restrain herself a bit more, since more and more people had started to notice the changes in her. The Ji family recently discovered an undersea secret realm and invited me to go. I could take your disciple along, what do you think? Ji Xiaoyu asked. Upon hearing this, Guan hurriedly shook his head. An XN is timid, there's no need to take her. I'll be there, she won't encounter any mishaps. It's unnecessary. It's not something I wish to see to burden you. Is that so? Yes. I just feel that her aptitude is improving. Staying in Medicine Valley might bury her talent. I don't like to hear that. Would I delay her? Guan glared at Ji Xiaoyu. He had intentionally said this to make Ji Xiaoyu believe that the high-level cultivator guiding an XAN was someone else. Ji Xiaoyu's mouth lifted into a smile. All right then, I want to invite her. I want to see what you can make of her. Chapter 333 Predecessor 3 days passed by quickly. On that clear morning, Guan took an XN to Mortal World Peak early without bringing the Blood Prison Great Saint, which was to say the least rather disappointing for him. The reason he didn't bring the Blood Prison Great Saint was because Guan had acquaintances in the Sea Demon domain, and he feared it would be inconvenient. As for an XN wearing his specially made mask, it was very difficult for anyone to recognize him. An Xian who cultivated the all things form and energy art, could also conceal his aura. High-level cultivators did not guess one's identity by appearance. After arriving at Dingtian Peak, Guan read books inside the house, and so did an Xin, though her gaze drifted outside the window from time to time, waiting for the two from Taoist Lord Yongyin to arrive. Close to noon, Taoist Lord Yongyin finally arrived, bringing not only Fu Xinxiu but also a female cultivator. This female cultivator was at the second level of the carefree immortal realm, not as advanced as Fu Xinxiu, but she was older and probably sent by Taoist Lord Yongyin to lead the way. And indeed, all they heard was Taoist Lord Yongyin introduce, "This is my younger martial sister, Dao name Yongxin, known as Fairy Yongxin. She will lead the way to the Sea Demon domain this time, as I need to stay at Mortal World Peak to avoid any mishaps." Fairy Yongxin followed with a salute to Guan, who returned the gesture. "Let's get going then," said Guan directly. If they could resolve the issue today, it would be great. A portion of the medicinal herbs in the outer world cave had ripened, waiting for him to harvest. Fairy Yongxin had no objections. The group went to the courtyard, where she summoned a small red mansion. The mansion rapidly expanded, taking Guan, Fu Xinxiu, and an Xian inside before turning into a red light disappearing into the sky. Taoist Lord Yongyin stood in the courtyard, looking in the direction where the mansion disappeared, concern in his eyes. Meanwhile, inside the grand hall of the red mansion, Fairy Yongxin invited Guan to sit and talk, while an Xian looked around curiously. "You're free to wander around, there's nothing dangerous here," Fairy Yongxin said to an Xian with a gentle smile. She might not have been stunningly beautiful, but her smile was generous and tender, easily engendering goodwill. An Xian glanced at Guan, and only after seeing him nod did she dare to leave. Fu Xinxiu sat opposite Guan, his expression calm. The Sea Demon domain has already seen the appearance of a carefree primordial immortal. It's said that in these 100,000 years, a great demon has been born there, cultivating for 100,000 years, entering the realm of the carefree primordial immortal, commanding countless demon soldiers, a force not to be underestimated, said Fairy Yongxin. Guan had long ago used his divine sense to probe the Sea Demon domain. Indeed, it was dangerous and the existence of immortal path entities within was incalculable. But for him it counted for little. While Fairy Yongxin updated him about the current powers within the Sea Demon domain, she observed Guan's expressions. Noticing that Guan remained composed, she felt somewhat relieved. He must indeed be a divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. Throughout the history of Mortal World Peak, divine immortals of wondrous Dharma had arisen. After reaching this level, most would head to outer heaven or seek chief fortune in the Holy Court. Few remained on Mortal World Peak. They had extensively discussed Ming Lang's purpose for coming to Mortal World Peak and eventually decided to try to win him over. If this venture went smoothly, Ming Lang would then stand completely together with them at Mortal World Peak. Fairy Yongxin mentioned several names of carefree primordial immortals. In the great heavenly spirit land, those who cultivated to this realm usually had a reputation and had dealt with each other a lot. Fairy Yongxin had only encountered this great cultivator, Ming Lang, appearing out of nowhere. She suspected Ming Lang was a pseudonym but did not point it out. After she finished speaking, Guan looked at the silent Fu Xinxiu and said, "Don't worry, as long as the earth element spirit is still there, it will surely belong to you." Upon hearing this, Fu Xinxiu hastened to thank him. He felt a mix of emotions. He had been sullen ever since Guan took Qingtian Peak away from him, but hearing Guan's words, he inexplicably admired Guan. Those of us in immortal cultivation should indeed have such a spirit. Thinking of Guan seizing Qingtian Peak with a wave of his hand, Fu Shengxia's eyes flashed with ardent desire. In fact, he anticipated the earth element spirit even more than Qingtian Peak. All immortal path supreme treasures are external. It's said that the strongest among the immortal path will eventually create their own treasures, and he had always believed he could reach the summit of the 9 heavens of immortal path. More than external wealth, he valued the improvement of his own strength. In the subsequent conversation, Fu Xinxiu also started speaking, providing specific information about some carefree primordial immortals. Fairy Yongxin felt somewhat relieved. She was aware of the conflict between the two, and she hadn't expected Guan to give Fu Xinxiu a way out so readily. It seemed he was not that difficult to get along with after all. When an Xian returned to Guan's side, she felt the atmosphere was very harmonious, which was not surprising to her. In her eyes, her master always managed to get along well with others and have enjoyable interactions. "Let me help the fairy to speed up a bit," Guan said with a smile. Immediately after, Fairy Yongxin's face changed as she sensed Guan's vast, ocean-like mana. Chapter 334. Is this it? A flash of red light zipped across the sea covered by storm clouds, fast as lightning. Guan and Xan, Fairy Yongxin, and Fu Xinxiu stood on the edge of the terrace, gazing over the spectacular vista of the Sea Demon Thunder domain. Demon energy permeated the area, but it could not obscure the fearsome waves and countless lightning bolts weaving through heaven and sea like monstrous dragons and serpents, fearsomely twisting. Every so often, a giant demon beast as large as mountains would burst from the sea surface and roar unrestrained, reminiscent of the primeval chaos. The earth element spirit appears in a place engulfed by a unique radiance, making it quite easy to locate. However, the earth element spirit may attempt to escape. If it is not captured quickly, it will dive into the sea and vanish without a trace, only reappearing the next time, Fairy Yongxin spoke. Guan nodded slightly. He could feel a strong divine thought pervading this ocean, dissipating within the waters, unable to condense. It seemed that the ancient great cultivator Fairy Yongxin mentioned had at least the cultivation level of a divine soul true immortal. Divine soul true immortals could also perish. Who knew what calamity he had faced? While pondering, Guan's divine thought enveloped the Sea Demon Thunder domain. The domain was immense, larger even than the entirety of the Broken Sea domain, teeming with countless demon creatures from every possible realm, ranging from the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma down to those in the energy cultivation realm. There were many areas within the domain that his divine thought could not penetrate directly. They were guarded by powerful restrictions. Though Guan could forcefully break through with focused divine thought and succeed, it would inevitably destroy the restrictions and cause the internal minor heaven and earth to shatter. Guan's divine thought locked onto that divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. This person was hidden within an island, surrounded by seas infested with demons each as large as the island itself, comparable to heaven and earth flying immortals. He just caught sight of a wandering immortal passing nearby, then watched as the immortal was swallowed whole by a black giant whale, so fast that its primordial spirit couldn't even escape. It was a female cultivator, almost like a fairy. Such a pity. Guan thought to himself while he responded to Fairy Yongxin. His divine thought quickly caught sight of a place glowing with an unusual light, and he directed Fairy Yongxin to fly in that direction. Standing beside Guan, an Xan observed everything around with intense curiosity. Such dense demon energy, all condensed into black mist. An Xan quickly said, "Of course it's good, I mean." Seeing her struggle to explain, Guan merely chuckled, "Let's head back first." Fairy Yongxin, smiling, felt this smooth operation was absolutely a surprise for her. Even if a carefree primordial immortal were to come to the Sea Demon Thunder domain, they would face life and death risks. As they reached outside the Sea Demon Thunder domain, Guan suddenly grabbed Nzin's shoulder, causing her heart to skip a beat, and she soon found herself flying out of the building. Guan, holding her shoulder with one hand and waving the other, sent the building into the distance. Fairy Yongxin and Fu Xinxiu were taken aback. Before they could react, Guan's voice reached their ears. "You two go ahead." The building sped away, the two feeling the rules of heaven and earth retreating along the way, allowing unimpeded passage, an intricate technique beyond their comprehension. "It seems he has another purpose," Fairy Yongxin remarked. Fu Xinxiu added, "I think it's because his disciple still wants to see more." Fairy Yongxin looked at him in surprise, asking, "Is he so capricious? With his cultivation level, how can that be considered capricious?" Fu Xinxiu responded, his gaze on the earth element spirit in his hand, his perception of Guan completely transformed. Meanwhile, Guan and an Xan soared on clouds, his divine thought covering an Xan, entering a special state where only those who reached the state of Tao Void mysterious immortal could see them. "Master, you don't have to do this for me, it's so dangerous here," an Xan cautiously spoke, deeply touched. Guan smiled, "Don't overthink it, it's not for you." "For whom then?" "You'll know soon." Hearing Guan say this, an Xan grew even more curious about what lay ahead. The storm clouds churned quickly along the way, and an Xan felt no discomfort despite their swift pace. Before long, Guan stopped. Lightning flashed through the clouds ahead, with demon mist swirling below. Suddenly, numerous evil ghosts burst out from the sea of clouds, startling an Xan, who instinctively moved closer to Gu, and booming sounds continuously came from below, drawing in Zin's attention. Moved by Guan's intent, they descended below the cloud sea, where an Xian was captivated by the massive battle occurring over the sea. A vast city phantom stood above the sea surface, from which endless divine souls and strange ghosts flew out, attacking the demons around Divine Exotic City. This was a chaotic war. Divine Exotic City? Is martial uncle Leia here? An Xian asked excitedly. Leia had participated in the Heaven Tier tournament, displaying Divine Exotic City's power, leaving a deep impression on an Xian. When she thought of the Immortal Path Supreme Treasure, Leia came to mind. That's an incredible Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. Master, is your Qingtian Peak this strong? An Xian curiously asked. Guan snorted. Divine Exotic City is a broken Immortal Path Supreme Treasure, merely a pseudo-Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. In terms of true power, it cannot compare to Qingtian Peak. Let me show you later. As soon as Qingtian Peak appeared, it grabbed the attention of all the demons. The demons, upon seeing Qingtian Peak, were equally scared. What is that? It's a huge mountain, no, an immortal treasure. Damn it, why is there another supreme treasure appearing? This aura? No good, it's dangerous. Retreat. Hurry, retreat. Panicked cries came from the demons as they scattered like monkeys when a tree falls, fleeing at tremendous speed. Qingtian Peak remained suspended in the air without touching down. Guan turned to an Xian and chuckled. It seems we can't show the full might of Qingtian Peak. An Xian wasn't foolish and shook her head. That's because, Master, you are merciful, otherwise they wouldn't think of escaping. Guan just laughed and shook his head. In that moment he thought of Long Zhan and Xiao Xingtian, and thus decided to adhere to his principles. His target for elimination should at least be beings with whom he had grievances. This would prevent others from speculating other reasons. Moreover, his annual gain in lifespan had already reached 1.5 million years, and he had no reason to needlessly kill innocents and accumulate karma. After all, he could play it safe and slowly become stronger. Guan's greatest cruelty was against plants and trees, as all beings must eat. Which cultivator doesn't use medicinal herbs for alchemy? What he could do was choose the path that best suited his own growth. That's why, to Zin's comment about mercy, Guan only smiled. He didn't consider himself merciful. His choices were also governed by a mindset of seeking benefits and avoiding harm. As the demons dispersed, the divine exotic immortal spirit heaved a sigh of relief. Leia, meanwhile, looked up at the majestic Qingtian Peak, feeling a sense of relief at that moment. So that's how it is. Leia had always felt unworthy of owning Divine Exotic City, but now, seeing the grandeur of Qingtian Peak, he realized the primordial ancestor possessed even stronger treasures. What was there to worry about? He didn't even know how high the primordial ancestor's Tao level was. Rather than being burdened, he would rather strive to become stronger and repay the primordial ancestor later. No matter how much he tried to think for the primordial ancestor's sake now, he couldn't possibly help the primordial ancestor, who was gambling on his future, not the present. As Qingtian Peak rose higher and rapidly shrank, it gave Leia a sensation of flying beyond the heavens. After Qingtian Peak disappeared, Leia didn't see the figure he hoped to see. He took a deep breath and said, "Let's go." The divine exotic immortal spirit turned its head and asked with surprise, "Where to?" "To a place where we can compete. Clearly this is not suitable for us, otherwise the primordial ancestor wouldn't have used another supreme treasure to save us," Leia said calmly. The divine exotic immortal spirit scratched its head, found the reasoning sound, and nodded in agreement. An hour later, Guan was situated in a separate courtyard. He sensed that Jianghu was in closed-door cultivation with disciples guarding outside. Sure enough, not much later, the guiding disciple hurried back, asking him to wait a few days since the sect leader was in seclusion. Guan wasn't in a hurry. With Jianghu in seclusion, he'd discreetly help her with her path enlightenment and leave. Once she found out Guan had been looking for her but hadn't waited, she'd definitely feel embarrassed. Just thinking about it, Guan was a little excited. Chapter 337, River of Destiny. At the age of 59, your son Lu Qiuxin succeeded in foundation establishment, making a name for himself in the outer sect of the Tao court. Consequently, you received widespread pursuit and admiration. Even the two companions who had traveled through time with you came to congratulate you, making you reflect on how life and fate are elusive. At 60, you successfully reached core formation. At 63, your son Lu Qiuxin awakened the Supreme Treasure Body, shocking the Tao court. He was exceptionally accepted into the Tao court, and from then on, you and your son parted ways. Supreme Treasure Body? Isn't that the treasure body once possessed by the divine exotic ghost king, Impermanence Tian? Guan was even more hopeful for this cycle of reincarnation evolution. This lifetime will he rise against the heavens through his son? What followed in the cycle of reincarnation was all about cultivation, waiting until 100 years later. At 172, you successfully broke through to the nascent soul realm. You had just shared the news with your wife, Yuan Linger, when suddenly you received the terrible news that your son Lu Qiuxin had fallen, his essence blood consumed by another. Upon hearing this, your wife Yuan Linger fainted on the spot. At 173, you finally uncovered the truth behind Lu Qiuxian's death. He died at the hands of the crown prince of the strongest divine dynasty of the era, who was also a direct disciple of the Tao court and had already stepped into the immortal path realm. The gap between your statuses was vast. Lu Qiuxian's master sighed and hoped you could let go of this matter. At 174, your wife Yuan Linger died of sorrow. After burying her, you left the outer sect of the Tao court. At 176, you couldn't abide the injustice you witnessed, saving a group of mortals. Before you left, an old man stopped you, declaring that your chi fortune was extraordinary and that there was a turn of fate in store for you. He offered to cast a divination for you, to help you find this turning point. Do you accept his divination for you? Yes. Let alone Lu Han, even just observing made Guan feel desperate. With such poor aptitude and cultivation techniques, when would Lu Han ever seek revenge? You accepted the old man's divination. During the process, his chi blood ran amok and he spat out reverse-flowing blood. Before collapsing, he told you that your turn of fate lay within Burial Immortal Ridge. After you confirmed that the old man was unharmed, you headed for Burial Immortal Ridge. At 185, you finally reached Burial Immortal Ridge. You learned it was a death zone for mortals. Even creatures of the immortal path struggled to survive there. Yet you resolutely entered Burial Immortal Ridge. What followed were various perilous encounters. Guan was on edge, fearing that Lu Han might suddenly die young. At 192, you stumbled upon an abandoned cave and unexpectedly discovered a stele inscribed with bizarre and complex characters. As you wandered about, you accidentally triggered a mechanism. In a panic, your blood splashed onto the stele as you collided with it, and soon after, a mysterious force drew you inside the stele. You arrived within the miniature world of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor and met the remnant soul of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor. After some negotiation, you ultimately became a disciple of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor. At 200, under the guidance of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor, you cultivated the Supreme Treasure Body. Your physical body was reborn, and you regained the appearance of a 20-year-old with no scars on your face. Only your hair turned white. At 210, you broke through the divinity transformation realm. Things are looking up. Chengkuan Saint Emperor? Just by the sound of it, he must be powerful. Guan was also excited, for he would feel Lu Han's experiences as the memories of the cycle of reincarnation flowed into his mind. Naturally, he hoped the memories would not be so filled with hardship. What came next were constant breakthroughs, practicing spells and divine skills. At 250, you broke through the Void Crossing realm. At 317, you broke through the Unification realm. At 430, you broke through the Mystic Heart realm. At 431, the Chengkuan Saint Emperor called you forth, saying his remnant soul had little time left. He wanted to help his Supreme Treasure Body step into the Supreme Tao Body before his soul dissipated, but it required enduring unimaginable pain. Do you accept? Accept. Guan made his choice without hesitation. You accepted the help of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor. After several months of tempering, you successfully cultivated the Supreme Tao Body, causing a phenomenon that alarmed the Tao rules of great heaven and earth. You gained the divine aspect of the Supreme Immortal. At 440, you left the miniature world of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor and returned to the mortal world. Upon reaching Burial Immortal Ridge, you were attacked by a Mahayana realm cultivator with an ancient treasure body. You slew the assailant, breaching the realm gap, and inadvertently consumed their essence blood, further strengthening your physique. Over the next 50 years, Lu Han left Burial Immortal Ridge, seeking out cultivators with ancient treasure bodies. Some were successful hunts, some were not, but in any case he always managed to escape. Guan saw traces of impermanence Tian in him, perhaps this was the destiny of the supreme treasure body. Chapter 338, Destruction Dao Seal, What's Wrong with You? Jiang Qiong asked with a furrowed brow, her expression growing colder as she continued, Is someone giving you a hard time? Hearing this, Guan revealed a smile and said, It's nothing, I was just thinking about the story of a book. Really? Asked Jiang Qiong looking doubtful. Truly, Guan laughed. Actually, I was thinking of leaving before you finished your seclusion. That way you might feel guilty for missing me. But you came so quickly it caught me a little off guard. After all, he was a divine thought true immortal. Even though Lu Han's memories were heavy and vast, he could quickly detach from them. To him, Lu Han was just a past life. Lu Han was him, but he was Guan. With Guan's words, the worry in Jiang Qiong's heart dissipated. She rolled her eyes at him and said in an irritated tone, You sure have quite the imagination. I wouldn't feel the slightest bit guilty. Is that so? It seems I've overestimated our relationship. But I'm still quite happy that you came looking for me. It's rare to see you leave the Supreme Sect. It's just that I suddenly thought of you. Every time, it's you who comes to find me. It's about time I came to you, especially since the Supreme Sect and the Jiuhua Sect have established a good relationship. The two chatted away. As Guan spoke, he observed Jiang Qiong's fate, peering into her destiny. Without undergoing nirvana, all mortals are just spirits. Guan could see the end of Jiang Qiong's life with one glance. Jiang Qiong's fate was remarkably intricate, with innumerable variations, essentially a multitude of possible trajectories. Within her destiny, Guan could not see himself, but he knew the reason there were so many branches in Jiang Qiong's future was because of him. His choices could change her destiny. However, all branches of destiny flowed toward the same conclusion: death. Some led to peaceful passing, others to death in battle, and some to deviation during cultivation, resembling a tree of fate spreading its branches. Fate seemed so cruel. Having fused with Lu Han's life experiences, Guan had a deeper insight into the workings of fate, understanding the mysterious forces that could, at any moment, disperse predestined paths. Guan conjectured that these were perhaps the slivers of opportunity left by the 3,000 great Tao, the slim chance for sentient beings to transcend mortal limits. As long as Jiang Qiong could achieve nirvana, her destiny would be toppled and reshaped. Guan thought of his own fate. What was it like? Being part of it, he could not peer into his own destiny. Fate was the confluence of all causality in life. Although those who could peer into fate could not see their own destinies, they could deduce the causality related to themselves and make predictions. What is the Tao level of the Dark War Emperor? I don't know, but definitely very high, the man in black responded, shaking his head at the thought of the Dark War Emperor, making his scalp tingle. All of a sudden, Guan said, It seems now that I don't need to leave. They'll just wait for the Dark War Emperor to eliminate the heavenly demons, and the Holy Court will naturally ask him to leave, right? Upon hearing this, the man in black became panicked and said, The Dark War Emperor is unpredictable, extremely violent, and will surely bring calamity to mortal world peak. If he devours the great emperor's demon fetus, he might even start a war with the Holy Court. You won't be able to avoid trouble either. Hearing this, Guan wasn't alarmed, just stared at him steadily. The man in black gritted his teeth, suddenly knelt down and said solemnly, Please, Elder, help the great emperor. As long as you can help with the birthing of the great emperor, our tribe will owe you a favor. Afterward, I will convey this matter back to my tribe, and you will gain our friendship. In the future, walking in the silent destruction domain will also mean having an ally. You're joking, what if he decides to attack me? Guan said coldly. The man in black looked up and explained, Don't worry, he has forgotten his past life memories. He is undergoing his own reincarnation stage, which is when he is the weakest. Once he is born, he will be a new being. You can even take him as a disciple, and when he achieves the Tao in the future, he will definitely not forget your kindness. After listening, Guan fell into hesitation. If you don't do this, once the Dark War Emperor emerges, he will surely come after you. The moment the Great Emperor is born, he will undergo reincarnation baptism, hiding the causality of the heavenly demon, making it impossible for the Dark War Emperor to find him, the man in black urged urgently. As if the Dark War Emperor might come to kill at any second. Guan hesitated for a moment, then asked, "How can I assist him?" The man in black was elated and immediately imparted a miracle technique. Guan listened intently, memorizing it in one go. The man in black urged, "Act quickly. If the Dark War Emperor finds him, he can obstruct the Great Emperor's path to achieving the Tao. We must not let him succeed." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.